call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, and welcome all members of the committee and welcome everyone who's watching us via the live stream this evening. We're glad that you're with us. The second item on the agenda is disclosures of pecuniary interest. I'll ask any member if you have a pecuniary interest you'd like to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime that you need to. Item 3 is additions, deletions, amendments. We don't have any of those. Item 4 is open forum. No open forum requests this evening. So that moves us on to delegations. And we do have 2 delegations this evening. And before I call the first one, I'll just remind them both that we have 10 minutes available for our delegations. And council does have a very full agenda this evening. So I'll ask our delegates to do their best to adhere to that 10-minute time frame. Our first delegation, and we're very honored to have the chief of the Saugeen First Nation, Lester Aniquet, and Doran Ritchie, a councillor for Saugeen First Nation, with us, and they're joined by Richard Nancaro, who is a project manager, and they're here to talk to us about the Saugeen First Nation Amphitheater and Gardens project. And I see Chief Aniquet there now. Welcome, Chief, and the floor is yours.
Okay, there we go. Good evening, everyone. I appreciate the time to present the delegation. That's regarding the amphitheater. We obviously are at a bit of a standstill with our construction, our continuation of the refurbishment. So we have a four-phase master plan that we're working on. I currently have an application before the Federal Economic Development Fund. We've spent over probably $4 million of our own money to date trying to refurbish, and we've done a good job to date, I would say. The dry stone wallers that we currently have now with their level 1, 2, and 3 are probably unique, and there's not many in the province, let alone Canada. So there's a great deal of trade that's come out of this initiative. Unfortunately, we find ourselves a little behind the 8 ball when it comes to funding. COVID and so on, and the church burning set us back a bit financially. So this evening is just a, make the committee aware of our situation. I know that many people in Saugeen Shores have enjoyed the amphitheater over the years. It's a tourism destination, just as Saugeen Shores is a tourism destination. Many weddings have taken place once the gardens were made available. The outside community was more than welcome to book the venue. So we'd like to get back to that that initiative, and we found a lot of cultural exchange as well. We've had people from Europe as well as Australia attend the gardens when it was in its height of the tourism attraction. So again, tonight is just more of an awareness, a plea possibly of whatever support that Saugeen Shores may be able to give us, lend us when maybe in kind or whatever. But I'll leave it the rest of the presentation to Doran and Richard Nancaro, who is our lead engineer on the project. So either one, maybe Doran, perhaps Councillor Doran would like to fill in, and then possibly Richard could provide a supplement. Again, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Saugeen Shores Mayor and Council, for allowing us to speak today. I'm just going to give you a real quick synopsis of this. The amphitheater was built and erected in the 1970s by the lead of Chief James Mason, the Wesley United Church, in consultation with Reverend Earl Stotesbury. Since then, it's been a major tourism draw. First, the repairs were identified in 2012, and that started a longer conversation about a long-term kind of master plan for the amphitheater. And as Chief clearly articulated, that we've hit a few stumbling blocks in here, but what I want to point your attention to is the significant contribution economically to the area. I know we have not in the past engaged very thoroughly on economic ventures, but I want to underscore the potential here. This is potentially a $25 million project. As you've seen it right now, I know Richard Nancaro has shared a presentation. We won't get into that today, but the possibilities, the ventures, the opportunities here is something that we really want to reach out to the region to, especially with our partners in Saugeen Shores. And we're working towards that. There's a master plan that is going to be consistent with a Sauble Beach tourism master plan that connects the amphitheater proper, potentially to some trails and networking and parking and available space to a more sustainable long-term use of the Sauble parks, but also connecting the communities, both from Saugeen Shores, Saugeen First Nation, and South Bruce via the beach. So there's a lot of plans here in the works, and as Chief articulated, the one issue that we're having right now is funding, and we're working on those things. But what we want to do is make sure that we are reaching out to our partners, our communities on the opportunity, because we're seeing this, and we all know there's a major disconnect from one municipality to another on their tourism opportunities, and how we kind of look at that as a global approach. So I wanted to underscore the idea and the possibilities that we have. The opportunities for obviously the scenic views. There's weddings. Richard Nancaro can confirm this, but I believe this is the largest naturally built amphitheater in Canada, I believe. I won't go as far as to say maybe North America, but there are major opportunities here, and looking at an advantage in a very uncircumstantial, issue. We had the tragedy of our United Church burning down, but that also has an opportunity. Now we can design that to the scope that feeds, not only just our community members, but multi-purpose, whether it be a wedding, whether it be a community gathering, whether it be a Christmas concert. These are all opportunities, and we thought it's proper and appropriate to reach out to Saugeen Shores just to inform us of, what this plan will include, because there's opportunities for economic development partnership and further bridging that gap towards reconciliation. And that's really what it's about today. It's just kind of talking about what we've been working on in the background. This project has been ongoing since 2012. And because this is such a large project, we didn't have the opportunity to apply for a major one-time funding like $25 million. That's a lot of work. And how this started, it was because identifying the deficiencies through what Reverend Stosbury wanted to leave. And this is really about his legacy, is he wanted to build something for our people. And he was well respected in our community, and he did leave quite a tremendous legacy. And what our intent to do is to really make sure that legacy lives on for ages and ages to come. And so that's why we wanted to meet with you today, and to talk about the dialogue, talk about the opportunities, and just create some conversation around that, because I'm assuming that there'll be further conversations down the road. I'm very cognizant of the time, so I'll stop there. I know Richard Nancaro, the project manager, and our engineer is also on the call. Richard, I defer to you if I missed anything. I'll leave it at that.
Leave it at that. We do have some applications in for funding, Infrastructure Canada, for green infrastructure. And that looks fairly promising. That'll cover all the costs of the project. So we're waiting for that. And at some point, we'd like to be able to meet with staff in Saugeen Shores and set up some sort of linkages there, because the ECDev person at Saugeen First Nation is Brad Ritchie. So I'd like to be able to meet with Brad and somebody in your community or in your administration. So we'll leave that open. And but I think this is going to be a really interesting project, and it's going to bring a lot of benefits to Saugeen First Nation and all the communities around the area. So that if anybody has any questions about the master plan, I can probably address that.
Sure, yeah. And I just say that I'm quite certain that opportunities to meet between our staff or anybody in our organization and any of you can be arranged. We're here, we're at your disposal. So that's certainly won't be any issue at all. But so thank you, Chief and Councilor Ritchie and Richard, and we'll ask if there's any questions or comments from members, and we'll start with Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation, Doran and Chief Aniquat. Good to see you again. And it's an exciting project. I know back well, it's a few years ago now, but my son certainly had his pictures taken, at the amphitheater, and with fond memories from back when that happened. And it's just and you're right, it's just such a wonderful tourism draw, something that's beneficial for our entire area. And I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I think it'd be great to see our economic development, tourism department, whichever department that may be, Kara, but reaching out to Saugeen First Nations and seeing what kind of assistance we can be. There's letters of support. There's in kind. What can we do? I don't have the answers tonight, but certainly maybe there's something we can do to assist with the project somehow. I think it's in all of our interests, because it's a wonderful draw for our whole area, Doran and Chief Aniquat. And I just want to thank you for all the great work you're doing, and Richard. And my one quick question was, in terms of completion date times, are you thinking like over the next 1, 2, 3 years? What's the time frame here? What are you thinking?
We're thinking spring of 2023 to get everything done. We have the buildings to build, 2 buildings to build as well. And we're going to go to public tender on it, and tendering process will take a couple of months. And then of course the architect has to do the complete designs for the buildings and everything. We've only got preliminary designs, so it's a lot of work still to do on the project.
Wonderful. I think it's great you're reaching out to municipalities, particularly Saugeen Shores, our friends and good neighbors at Saugeen First Nation, and hopefully we can do something. Kara and staff can meet, and we have a tourism department, and there's marketing and promotions, and certainly things we should be able to do. So hopefully. So again, thanks for your presentation.
Great. Thank you. Further questions or comments from members of the committee? Let's say I was just for myself, I was looking through the master plan document, and this really isn't what you have planned there is really going to be astounding. What this visitor center you have here, what a beautiful looking building. I mean, it's really going to be a showpiece of a facility. And as the Vice Deputy Mayor noted, I mean, I remember going every year there to see the fireworks on May 24th weekend, and being at the amphitheater. I mean, it's a great facility in your community and in our region, and so we're keen to help you achieve this great vision, however we can. So yes, please be in contact with us, with me, with Kara, with our staff, and we're happy to help however we can. Look forward to your success in getting this finished.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate you coming
in. One final comment. We would be looking for David to work with us at some point. We'll circle back to that when we chat again. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, that moves on to our second delegation, which is from Joanne Robbins and John Miller, and they're here to talk to us about Pumpkin Fest 2021. Well, there they are. John, Joanne, good evening.
Hey, thanks, guys. We want to thank you for the opportunity again this year to, I guess, spend no more than 10 minutes of your time here bringing up to date on what's been going on and what we've been planning. Again, as our tagline has sort of become this year, we're going to try and do the best of both worlds. Last year, we did go virtual. We had some great success, provincially recognized for some of the things we did. And again, some of our ideas that we came up with and things we worked with were actually carried on and become part of the normal of how these presentation events work. So again, without further ado, we'll just jump into it here. Next there, I guess that's the term. Again, I think the biggest thing we want to stress here is everything in Ontario has been hurt by this COVID-19. Everything is down, but it's Lisa McLeod, as the Ministry of Tourism has said, the industry and the event industry are two of the hardest hits and will obviously take the longest to come back. That being said, the public wants it. We know from our webpage, we know from things we put out, people are looking for these activities. Our goal is to do this as for the community, but also as safely and properly as we can. Again, some of the things in the package here, the 2021, we've been through working with the town staff, the health units, fire department, Saugeen Shores, to get, how many can we have safely there? Who can be there and how can they do it? And again, we're continuing for approval, looking for the assistance. And again, I have to say right now, the town has been amazing. You guys are great to work with. Joanne has never been so complimentary. That they've always been there for us in the past, but under these circumstances, we've never had more luck. So let's get to it next, what we're doing this year. What is virtual? First of all, the way off itself is going to be completely separate. We have the home base there, the Bruce Power International Way Off, and there isn't going to be any public permitted to join us this year. The VIP sides, the spitting, famous for our councillors, our MPs, everybody, radio stations. We're going to be doing that, but we're going to be doing it either recorded or in the submission. Again, Star Search contest, decorating contest, the virtual part of the car show, and then the live feeds from the thing. They're all going to be available. Going to be available this year on pumpkinfest.org, YouTube, very similar to what council is doing with their broadcasts. 9 a.m. start on the Saturday morning. Then of course that night, the Lions Club again, the Mega Bingo, huge success last year, some big winners. And then on Eastlink YouTube for the and at pumpkinfest.org for the bingo. What's going to be live this? Oh, next. What is live this year? What are we going to try and do? What are we bringing to the main street, the parking lots, the area around town? We're going to bring back the Midway. The Midway is going to be there for the kids, of course, similar to other years, but again, in a different setting, more space involved, a chance for the kids, again, full protocol, COVID protocol on what they're doing and how they're going to be riding it. But we want to bring something that's not always in Saugeen Shores for the kids to do. Give them a chance to get out there again. Vendors and food trucks right throughout our Pumpkin Fest village, that area. And then one of the biggest thing that I'm excited about here is everybody loves a Jumbotron. So we're going to have that set up at the food court, picnic table area, market area. And you're going to be able to see the way off. We're all literally a few feet away will be going on, but it's a chance for people to be there and see it. Some of these giant pumpkins, what the event is about, we're going to make sure that people get a chance to enjoy that with the public and doing it again, like I'm going to stress so much as we're doing at all of our meetings, safely and in a proper environment. On the Sunday, again, that same area, the food court market is going to be available, set up, again, and we're going to have your rolling car show. So everybody can pick a spot along the route and watch the show, but we're going to have a few of our select attendees or people that are involved in the show, and they're going to be broadcasting and it's going to be live on the Jumbotron. So those of us that don't have those nice cars or those little hobbies that cost us thousands of dollars, will be able to still enjoy and see what some of our road viewers are going. Or for those that don't want to come down to the group, they're going to be able to be on the route and enjoy that part of it as well. Again, something we've struggled with, but with this year being a different year, we aren't going to be asking for admission. There won't be any wristbands. Again, that being said, donations are always going to be welcomed. We are working on 2022's budget again, because this is going to, we're tapping the bank here now to get these shows going. But again, that's something that we would always be accepting. Again, safety in mind. Some of the things that we are going to be stressing is when you're at our venues, be it our Saturday car show on the main street or in attendance at our food court, our markets, is unless you're sitting down at our picnic tables eating, we will be asking people to wear masks. We will, again, be asking everybody to adhere to the social distancing, something we're all becoming part of today's society, part of what we're doing. And then again, we do have capacity limits. These have been worked on by both the town and the health units and things, so that our village will allow us up to 5,000 people at a time. And then our car show on the Saturday, which will be on the main street, the static part of it, right term static?
Yes.
See, I'm not a car show guy. Static part of it. We're looking at 3,674 people. And we will be having up to 175 cars. So, we're going to try and make it worth people's while. We don't, it's not an all day event. This is maybe not the year that we're inviting everybody to Toronto, come out and see us. But if you live in Grey Bruce and you want to come over for a few hours entertainment and fun, this is what we're looking for. Next. Again, we're going to ask the public to help us, just like we have other years, but we do have, limits. We are going to have to monitor the people. We're going to make this safe. We're working with all of our partners, the police units, the auxiliary, things like that, but we're also looking at our volunteers. We're asking that people, when you do come, they use the entrances and exits. We obviously, for simple logistic reasons, can't fence off the entire area, especially around the car show, but we do ask that people use the entrance and the exits to help us control our traffic flow to keep everybody safe. And again, let everybody get out and enjoy themselves as we return to normal or work on continuing to more of what we've had historically in the past. Again, closer to the date, we'll bring you up more information on where they are. Again, information on the shuttles, things like that, to try and keep some of the traffic flow out of the Main Street areas, as well as we're currently working with the town staff right now on proper routes for those that do need to just travel through Port Elgin, be it because they're working that day or they're heading north or south, and we don't want to tie up traffic any more than we have to. Again, next. Public help us there again, some of the things we've talked about. We ask, when they are traveling, watch out for their alleyways. We do have a couple of businesses, a couple of apartment buildings that historically we've had to, leave accesses open for safety reasons. We're going to ask that everyone just take it easy, take their time. We're not going to be in a rush that day at all. Again, if you're in the town, we always pray for good weather for Pumpkin Fest, but shuttle stops, confirmations, we will be limited again, how many can be on a bus, how many can be there, but we are going to be using that to try and keep the traffic flow down. And the other thing is, if somebody has a question or they see something in council night and say, hey, that's not going to work, let us know as soon as you can. We've come up with 99% of the things, but that other 1% can make the weekend go easier. The other one is a thing that we do every year for Pumpkin Fest, and we're making a call for volunteers. Sometimes people aren't able to come out and help during the year, or they don't want to be involved in the budget meeting process or any of those lovely, exciting things that we do. But on the Saturday and Sunday, if you're willing to come out and man a barricade to help us direct people, even if it's just for a few hours, let us know. Again, fill out the form online, pumpkinfest.org or 519-389-3714. We will be looking for volunteers. Next. Again, my 10 minutes must be getting closed up because my timing said I should be just about out of there. But again, we want to thank council and staff. Again, it's been a tough year. It's not always easy. I'm sure everything you guys know takes this meeting not in person. I'm still a guy that likes to read off the crowd and know who's on my side and who's not. So it's hard to do that online. But again, questions, anything like that, this is the time. And of course, I've got Joanne here right beside me.
Well, thanks very much, Joanne and John. I think you can count on the fact that we're all on your side around this table at the moment, but we'll turn it over to members of the committee and see if they have any questions or comments. Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and to John and Joanne, thank you so much for your dedication over the last 2 years. We've heard the term pivot used countless times for many businesses, but you've had to pivot and probably pivot again. And so we thank you for that. I know on behalf of the Port Elgin BIA, we're extremely excited to have some activity back in the downtown core and looking forward to getting out and enjoying the car show and all that Pumpkin Fest has to offer.
Great, thank you. Further questions or comments? Councilor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, John and Joanne. It's good to see you again. Just for clarity, because I do have a car that I have participated in the show a couple times. So there's a rolling car show, and that's on the Saturday, and the static car show is on Sunday. Is that what I'm just a bit confused?
Okay, it's actually the other way around. So the Saturday will be the static car show on the main street.
Okay.
So kind of like we've had other years. And then that way, of course, on the Sunday, we'll be doing the rolling car show starting at one of our sponsors down at
Vanderhaaf's Independent.
Vanderhaaf's. I haven't figured out
Vanderhaaf's,
yet. We'll be starting there on the Sunday, and then the car show will be that taking place on Sunday. That gives our an opportunity for the vendors, car shows that not only want to be on the main street or are able to be with us so that people can come and see the cars, but also give them a chance to get out on the Sunday and do the drive. And I really think this will maybe become part of something we do almost permanently, because these car shows are taking off. And, you know, we never want to give up our car show on the main street. It's a uniqueness in all of Ontario, I believe, still. It's something that we do in Saugeen Shores, not only better than everybody else, but maybe the only ones that still do it. So we never want to lose that. But at the same time, the Sunday car show, a chance to get out and enjoy our beautiful countryside, is definitely, you know, something I can see will be here for a long time.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Look forward to it.
Thanks, Dave.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, the Vice Mayor.
just a quick comment, and Councillor Smith has said it so well, but John, thanks so much. You're, as a volunteer, you just keep giving, and done it for many years in many different facets in our community, and you're one of our finest volunteers. We really appreciate all you do. And Joanne, you just keep doing it and doing it well, and with all your roles over the last 25, 30 years. So thanks again for all you're doing with Pumpkin Fest. Thank you.
Well, for all, I'll say they let me do the talking here. I know that without Joanne, Anne Marie, Connie Barker, Doug Court, I mean, we have a number of strong volunteers that have been with this group. While we were talking about potential what might be this year, and with the good weather, we're worrying that it might be the same as 24 years ago when we had too many wasps at the garbage can. And that was 25 years ago we're talking about this. So, you know, there's a lot of history when people remember that from 25 years ago, that I think we had 22 wasp bite that year. So we've got history, and we've looked at every possible what might be. So we're quite comfortable, and we're looking forward to this.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Well, I will certainly be there volunteering on.
Okay, we'll write that down now. Check.
What's that? Yeah, you could. That's right. Check me off, and I'm sure lots of others in the community will be. I know you guys can always use lots of volunteers. I know you called for them, but I'll do it again. If anybody out there who's watching is available that weekend to volunteer, I know that Pumpkin Fest could use you. So get a hold of Joanne and John and volunteer. But it's a great event. Glad to see it back. Glad to see the Midway back, and a little bit. A slightly more normal version of Pumpkin Fest, and maybe in a year's time we can have a fully normal version of Pumpkin Fest. But one way or the other, we really appreciate you guys making sure it's happening. It's a really treasured event in Port Elgin and in Saugeen Shores, and you guys make it happen. So thank you very much for all you're doing, and we can't wait for a really successful weekend in a few weeks. It's coming up soon.
It's coming up, and we just need the good sunny weather now. Just like today would be perfect.
It's going to happen. I feel it. It's going to happen. All right. Thank you guys very much. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. So that moves us on then into, we have no public meetings, so we're into reports of municipal officers and committees. And the first report is a general government report. And it's a staff report about filling vacant office of the Southampton Ward Councillor. And I'll turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you, and through you. So as council is aware, Councillor Rich has resigned his Southampton Ward Council position effective September the 7th. So in accordance with the Municipal Act, a report has been placed directly on the council agenda to declare the office vacant, and we'll deal with that later this evening. The purpose of this report is to establish the process to fill the vacancy within the next 60 days. So council shall either fill the vacancy by appointment or pass a bylaw requiring a by-election. This report considers the three options, and option 1 is to fill the vacancy by appointing a candidate from the 2018 election. Option 2 is to fill the vacancy by appointing an eligible elector through an accountable and transparent process. Or option 3 is to fill the vacancy by appointing through a by-election. So if a by-election is held, the Municipal Elections Act requires it to be conducted as far as possible in the same way as the regular election. So in this situation, it means the by-election would be conducted using internet and telephone voting only for the Southampton Ward electors. Due to the cost, the time, and the resources required to hold a by-election, it's staff's recommendation that the vacancy be filled by appointment. So I draw your attention to option 2, which is the staff's recommended option to fill the vacancy by appointing an eligible elector through an open and transparent process. And just as a reminder, the definition of eligible elector is any person who is at least 18 years of age, a Canadian citizen, a resident of Saugeen Shores, or an owner or tenant of land in Saugeen Shores, or the spouse of such owner or tenant, and not otherwise prohibited from voting under the Municipal Elections Act. The process to make this appointment would involve advertising for interested eligible electors to submit an application that includes a declaration of office and a personal statement, including the person's background, relevant qualifications, and the reasons for being interested in serving on council. As clerk, I will receive the applications and confirm the person is an eligible elector. Council will hold a special meeting thereafter, which in the procedure is referred to as the appointment meeting. During the appointment meeting, council would hear a short presentation from each of the candidates. And after hearing the presentation, council would vote openly to appoint the new member. If council chooses to fill the vacancy by appointment, there is a procedure attached to this report that goes into greater detail on how the process will work. And there's also a timeline outlined in the report that would result in the appointment meeting being held on or about, I gave 2 dates, October the 19th or October the 26th. This is only a suggestion and can be tailored to meet council's direction. So I'll leave it at that for the moment, Mr. Mayor, and respond to any questions that may arise.
Okay, well, there's a recommendation. I'll read it, then we can take questions or comments. It's recommended that the vacant office of Southampton Ward Councillor be filled by appointment, and that option 2 be used to fill the vacancy, and that council approve the procedure to fill a council vacancy attached to this report. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, and through you. Thank you, Linda. Just a question with regards to option 1 and option 2. I guess when I read it, option 2 just allows us to cast a wider net. Those that ran in the election in 2018 are also eligible to join this process as well. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further questions from members? Councillor Grace, and then Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much for this report, Linda. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have just a clarification question on option 2. It reads, voting will continue. This is within the council appointment meeting. Voting will continue until the nominee receiving the greatest number of votes has also received more than 1/2 of all votes of the voting members of council. Does that mean all votes of all eligible voting members or all present voting members?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would mean all present members.
Okay, thank you. I favor option 2. I think having a by-election, whereas that would be the, I guess, the most democratic way to choose a replacement, is also, I think, unreasonably expensive. And so I think that option 2 provides the second most democratic option. So I will support staff's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, and through you. With regard to option number 1, I'm wondering if we could clarify whether this includes only those candidates who were running in the Southampton ward, or if consideration was given to all candidates on all ballots for option 1.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we were to seriously look at detail of option 1, I'd need council's direction. I'll answer it in my opinion. In my opinion, it means all candidates in the previous election.
Okay, and thank you. A secondary question. In previous instances where we have required replacement, it is my understanding that option 2 has been utilized in the past. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I think, Mr. I'll be supporting number 2 and the staff's recommendation. I think it's the right way to go. I don't think it would be necessary for us to spend $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000, whatever the amount I rated in the report wasn't cheap to run a by-election. I think it's been mentioned earlier, it's been run successfully in Kincard and Brockton and right here in Saugeen Shores in the past, and I think it can work again. The one question I did have was the voting procedure. Through you to Linda. Then the council will vote by way of an open public vote. Council members will verbally cast their vote in random order drawn by lot. Is the verbally, Linda, with with the Ontario Municipal Act? Is it our own rules? Why voting verbally, not by secret ballot?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is in the provincial legislation. It must be open. Secret ballot is not allowed to be taken by a council member, so it has to be open. It could be raising of your hand, but in this particular case, when you have to name a person that you wish to vote for, then it has to be verbally.
Just a follow-up question, if I could, Mr. Mayor. So what is there a difference between, I think Bruce County, Mr. Mayor, do they not vote by secret ballot or not? And what's the difference between a municipality and a county?
I mean, Linda would know this. The warden is elected by secret ballot, but it may be a different, maybe different rules. I don't know, Linda, do you know the answer to that?
No, I can have a chat with the county. I'm not familiar with the legislation that they follow with respect to electing appointing their warden. Possibly it's because it's within. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'd be interesting, I'd be interested in knowing the answer to that question. Not that I don't mind voting in person. You're going to vote for or against, for someone, and that person doesn't get in. You're having to work with that person for the next year. I can do that, but I'd prefer secret ballot myself. But if you could get back to council on that, Linda, I'd be interested in knowing the answer.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from members? I too will be supporting Linda's recommendation. We've had, in my memory, two folks appointed in this way, the late Councillor and later Vice Deputy Mayor Doug Gowanlock and Ton Frost were both appointed to council initially in this way. Both turned out to be excellent members of council. So I think it's a good way to do it, and turns out well and works well for the public and in the public's interest. So. So with that, you've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That is carried. Okay. So that moves us on then to the second report, a staff report on the flag policy, and the clerk.
Thank you, and through you. So this report presents a draft flag policy that provides the guidelines for the raising and half-masking of flags on municipal property. The policy documents the current practices and delegates the authority to the CAO to raise special event flags, and delegates the authority to the mayor and the CAO to lower flags to half-mast. The policy is attached for your consideration.
Thank you, Linda. There's a recommendation that the flag policy be approved. Are there questions or comments? See, Councillor, we'll start with the Deputy Mayor and then come to Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this policy. It's a good policy, but to go along with that, and I'm sorry I'm zooming out here, my computer's acting up. I would also like to see that we get one or two new flagpoles that are able to accommodate 4 flags. I've talked about this before, that we have the Canadian national flag, the provincial flag, the municipality flag, and then our 4th flag be the one that we fly for special occasions. So I guess I'll have to put that through budget, but I do want to mention at this time that I've mentioned this before, and I think that it'd be important to have this at the facilities, that we show all the flags that are supposed to be represented, and then we're not missing anything as we go along.
Yeah, I think it would be I think you've touched on it. It would be a good thing to include as a council request for the 2022 budget. Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, and through you, I also love the idea, and I love the idea of the community flagpole and that concept. Can I just ask why the police services flag is not included within this policy?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The police services have their kind of own etiquette for lowering the flag at different occasions when there's a loss of a police officer or an RCMP officer. The flagpole itself has always been under kind of the jurisdiction of the chief of police as opposed to the CAO.
Okay, and just to follow up, if I may, thank you for that. What about the large flag at Millard Boulevard? And I know that that's done by a volunteer group, Friends of the Flag, I think is the group's name. They're responsible for that, monitoring the weather and changing out the large flag for a small flag. Is that also included in this policy or no?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I have included the large flag and the contact being the Friends of the Flag.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you
we've
very
always-
much.
We've raised and lowered the flag a couple of times this year and have had really an excellent relationship with the flag captains who look after the flag in Southampton, and so I anticipate nothing but a continuation of that, and that they'll respond to our request to raise and lower it as required. Okay, further questions or comments from members? I don't see any, so all in favor? That is carried. Okay, that moves us then on to the third report, which is a staff report to declare land surplus to the town's needs adjacent to 232 Railway Street. The clerk.
Okay, and thank you, and through you. This report requests council's approval to commence the process to stop up and close and declare the land surplus to the town's needs. The subject lands are a little bit hard to describe, but they are two parcels of land. There's a triangle portion of land that forms part of Highway 21 connecting link, and that's between Peel and Adelaide Street, abutting the south boundary of 232 Railway Street. The second portion is the lane that abuts the easterly boundary of that triangle parcel I just described. So those are the two parcels. They are road allowances, so we will require the MTO's approval, especially for that connecting link parcel, and we will need to address minor encroachments on the land. In order to receive the MTO's approval and to describe the land, we need to spend some money to do the survey to get that description. I believe the land is going to be approximately 1,300 square meters. It may take a few months to complete the survey and the public notice process. Once we complete the public notice process, we will report back to council with a bylaw or a staff report, depending on the outcome, to complete the road closing and the surplus land process. After that portion of the process is completed, staff will report back again with the process to sell the lands. At this point, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Linda. There's a recommendation. I'll read it, then we can take questions or comments. It's recommended that council authorize staff to commence the process to declare surplus to the town's needs the property noted as part of PIN 332650001 and the lane PIN 332650104, and that council gives notice of the intention to pass a bylaw to stop up and close a section of unopened road allowance and lane adjacent to the to Railway Street. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none. Oh, Councilor Schreier.
Sorry about that. I was a little bit late. Thank you, and through you. So this process is triggered by a request for somebody to purchase the parcel of property. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
And when it's a open and transparent process, that person, whomever put in the inquiry, then will put their name forward in order to say that they're interested in purchasing that, and others might join that as well then. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And do we know what the total cost for this would be, like our cost? And I know that it's funded from reserves, but I think that we need a reference plan or a survey that would be required as well. What would the total cost to disposition this land be?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the cost for the survey, we typically put in a cost of about $3,500. And then there's the nominal cost for the advertising, which will be a couple $100s. So that will get you to a state where we can declare it surplus. And after that, then any additional cost, including that cost, will be recovered in the sale of the land.
Okay. Any further questions or comments from members? I guess just a quick question, Linda. So it's a standard part of the stopping up and closing procedure where the land is beside Highway 21 or Albert Street in this case, that the MTO would have to not only be consulted but approve a sale of land. Like I'm surprised that they have approval authority over a land, over municipal land and what we do with it.
Yeah, it is a little bit confusing in that, and maybe the approval is maybe a strong word, but the triangle piece of land is not a separate parcel of land. It actually is part of the connecting link. So I'm cautious about saying the approval of it. We've never sold part of the connecting link before, so it's very difficult to find out, researching through MTO, what the actual process is. They may come back to us and say, hey, we granted you the connecting link status. and the ownership, but we want you to keep it all as one parcel. I don't know. I'm just guessing that. So
We do own it, but it was conveyed to us by the province as part of the connecting link. So it's like, so it will come down to the contents of the agreement that we signed when the lands were conveyed to us. I guess that's the point.
that is correct. Thanks.
All right. Okay, very good. So if there's nothing further, you've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That's carried. Okay. That moves us on to the fourth item, which is a report on the Housing Reserve Fund, and we have the treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the increase in housing costs in the region, Council has made it clear that housing initiatives are a priority. Council passed a new development charges bylaw earlier this year, and that bylaw called for an optional allocation of up to 5% of the total development charges payable on a development to be made to a housing reserve fund. The creation of the Housing Reserve Fund allows for staff to properly allocate any payments from those who choose to make that optional allocation. The Housing Reserve Fund can be used for any project or initiatives that are aimed towards assisting with housing policy or increasing the supply of housing within Saugeen Shores. Potential future funding sources include reallocations from other reserves, sales of surplus land, or taxation directed towards housing initiatives as part of the budget process. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Well, there's a recommendation, and it is that the Housing Reserve Fund be established and designated as a discretionary reserve fund. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Daniel. And this is another, exciting step forward, a positive step forward, I believe, towards setting up a housing reserve fund. I think anything we as a council can do to further incentivize development from an affordability, attainability standpoint, then I really do believe we're moving in the right direction. And there are municipalities that have housing reserve funds. We don't yet. This will allow us to do it. And I'm very supportive of the recommendation, Mr. Mayor. And I just had a question for Daniel. Daniel, when you talk about about usage, funds are to be used for any project or initiative that is aimed towards assisting housing policy, increasing supply. Can you give us just a little bit of an idea, flesh that out a little bit in terms of what are some of the things we could use those funds for?
Any council directed initiative, any studies that are required as part of determining supply of housing policy or anything like that, or incentives for development, as all things that have been discussed by council in the past. And the reason we've left it broad in the report and in the direction of the reserve is just to allow council flexibility on what those funds are used for.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. I'll be supporting this recommendation.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from members? Councillor Carr.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to Daniel. I guess just to be clear, to follow up on Mike's question there. So, throw a hypothetical question out there. So we set up this reserve and we're approached by a group, I'll use Habitat for Humanity as an example. They decide they want to build a home in our community. Is this something that we'd be able to purchase land with? Is that an appropriate use? Is this the type of thing that we're hitting at, or am I totally off base on that type of use?
As long as it's following all provincial legislation or all applicable legislation, council can direct the funds out of the reserve for any purpose that they feel is suitable or feel is appropriate.
Okay.
Okay. Further questions or comments? I don't see any. I think this is, the one thing that's important to recognize about this is it helps us to enact what we passed just recently in the development charges bylaw. We're going to create this opportunity for folks for developers to contribute part of their development charges to a reserve. So we needed to create the reserve in order to take those funds. And I think a big thing that we can do with it then is make those funds in this reserve available to those same developers to build affordable housing in our community. So I think more than just doing studies and things, which is important, I'm hopeful the funding will be used to directly incentivize developers to build affordable housing as part of new subdivisions in the town of Saugeen Shores. So you've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Daniel. All right, so now we're into 7.3, infrastructure and development. And the first report is a staff report on a subdivision agreement with Southampton Landing Phase 2 and the director.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Council asked that we defer this agreement at the last council meeting to give staff time to work with the developer to include a provision for secondary suites within the agreement. So that has been done. This agreement now contains a provision to include 10 secondary units within this phase, and those units could be within the townhouse block or within the single-family houses.
Thank you. There's a recommendation. I'll read it. We can take questions. It's recommended that council pass a bylaw to authorize a subdivision agreement for the Southampton Landing Subdivision Phase 2. Questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor.
Just a couple questions, Mr. Mayor, and one comment too. Amanda, and maybe it's a Jane question too, but I still remain concerned about parkland dedication in terms of accessing the park. There's been 6 new homes built on McNabb Street. I thought from an old agreement back in 2007 to Camelot Estates that we would be accessing that land off of McNabb for parkland and the land in behind. I forget the block. It's in the block 44 or 45. But I guess my question, Jane, I guess you popped on here. I was over to take a look at that. It looks as though they're putting in just last Friday, maybe in anticipation of this question tonight, it looks as though there's a 4 or 5 foot, 6 foot, 1-2 meter pathway being put off of constructed from McNabb in behind the houses into the park. I'm just wondering about access for grass cutting equipment. It's a park, right? And someday there'll be swings and slides and teeter totters. Hopefully there's not really a park in that neighborhood. There's a deficiency in that corner of town. So I'm concerned about access, Jane. It just doesn't look like you're able to get in. It looks like it's landlocked. So can you talk about that? And I have another comment.
Yeah, certainly. My conversations with Jay have solidified. The plans haven't necessarily changed from our original conversations and the design prospect of this parkland. There is access off McNabb. In fact, there's 2 access points off McNabb designed at this point, from what I can see in the drawing in front of me. So certainly there's opportunities for future detailed planning in this, but I hear what you're saying as far as a challenge to getting equipment back there. At this point, it hasn't been brought as an observation that it is a challenge, and we continue to work with the developers to ensure that we have access to the parkland.
But just as a follow-up, but it is a challenge. I've been over to look at the site, and it would appear to me you've got maybe 1 to 2 meters wide to get around the corner of that lot between that, and I'm not going to call it a stormwater retention pond. Don, you can help me with the wording, but or Deputy Mayor, but it just looks very narrow, Jane, and it concerns me that it appears to be landlocked. And so I guess what I'm hearing is that there will be a report come back at some point, Jane, for the design of the park. And I understand there's another, quote, parkette. I just learned today with the meeting with Jay that there's a little parkette in the Southampton Landing subdivision, which is good news, about 1/4 of an acre apparently.
Yeah.
Jane, what's planned for that little parkette in that corner of Southampton Landing?
So as the details continue to be finalized with the developer, we're certainly looking at some playground equipment, a small portion in that back corner. I'm assuming you're referring to the east end.
Yes.
In that area, and the potential of a barrier of tree fencing as well in that area for to mask, I'll say, the fence that's along the back of the municipal property as well. But there is a meeting. I hear what you're saying. There's certainly a meeting planned this week with the developer, which we will continue to fine tune that development of the parkland, and your concerns will be addressed.
Okay.
But certainly, I hear what you're saying. Thank you.
I see a comment from the CAO wanted to make a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on the director's comments there. And on page 77 of your package, You will see there that there's access on McNabb Street, which you've raised by Deputy Mayor, and Jane has acknowledged they'll do some additional work on it. There's also access Peel Street and internally to the subdivision on Lake Forest Drive. So there's a consolidation of 3 blocks there. So the parkland block, the environmental protection block, and the stormwater management block are all going to be consolidated into what will become the town's property.
Okay, I am concerned about that park being landlocked, and I just think, I mean, the good news about this approval this evening that we're talking about is that there's 10 new secondary dwelling suites. We don't want to lose sight of that. That's a good news story. 2 weeks ago we deferred; they weren't there, and Mr. Mayor, I just want to commend Jay, staff, and the developer for listening. We have a attainable housing, affordable housing need in our community, and the developers come back and said, yes, okay, yeah, we can do it now, and so that's a good news story. I'll be supporting this with the condition, and I don't know how we do this. Madam Clerk will have to help with this, but with the condition that there's access for parks equipment into that park. And you can help me understand how that works this evening, but I just don't want to let this go without knowing that there will definitely be a way into that park, because right now I don't believe there is for 10, 8 or 10 feet wide. I just don't think it's there for what I'm seeing. So I'll leave that with you, Mr. Mayor, to sort it out. But that'd be my my thoughts.
So I did see the Deputy Mayor put his hand up. I wanted to, just before I go to him, know can maybe the CAO or the director advise council as to, we say we approve this subdivision agreement here this evening. We have some parkland dedicated in here. What assurances can you give council that the parkland that it's going to receive as part of this agreement will be usable for the municipality? Or maybe another way to put it is, what future processes exist after the subdivision agreement to ensure that? I mean, obviously, it's in the public interest to have the parkland and to have access to the parkland. And can you assure council that we will have those things if we assign this agreement tonight?
Thank you for the question. I think what's difficult to see at this point in time is when we're looking at a block plan for the subdivision, what it's going to look like on the ground when the subdivision actually starts to build out. So I think you heard a description from the director about how the park plans were going to be advanced. There's been a couple of meetings already with regards to that. We typically refine those details as we move forward with the park development process. So as an example, tonight later in the agenda, you're seeing the park development plans for Summerside Park in the estate subdivision there. So we could take away the comment tonight that we ensure that access is provided. I acknowledge that there are, again, a consolidation of blocks here that are coming together to create a large parcel of land that will come into the town ownership, but we can take the comment away. It's typically not addressed at the subdivision agreement stage. We take the comment away and ensure through the park development process that we're making sure that happens.
So that, just so I'm clear, council could approve the subdivision agreement this evening, and there's a subsequent process related to the park that will ensure that we do not have a landlocked piece of parkland there. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and I'm not sure if the director of infrastructure and development wanted to add to that. Sorry. Yeah.
Anyone who wishes to speak, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Schedule E has language in it that says the parkland will be developed, designed, and implemented through a separate agreement. So by signing this agreement, the developer is committing to doing a future agreement for how we will lay out that park.
Okay. I have the Deputy Mayor next. Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I've got two screens going here. I'm still very concerned about this. Having grown up there, I know this block of land intimately. I think our CEO said there'd be an access off of Lake Forest. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor. If you look at the plan on page 77 of your council package, you can see on the bend of the road, Lake Forest Drive, that there's a a block access intended there as well?
I'm not sure where. Is that down block 45 going into 44?
If it's okay with the mayor and clerk, I'd be happy to share my screen.
I'd appreciate that, please. Thank you.
Okay. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so right here.
So
see
you're
there.
saying you're going to put an access from block 45 going through the environmental hazard land in block 46, and you're going to build a bridge or two to get up to block 44 where we're scheduled to have a parkland.
I'm sorry, the block numbers that you're not that you're referencing aren't the same as the ones on this plan, but
okay, so 95, you're going to go up through 95. The bottom of 95 is our land. It'll be next to the townhouse block. But to get to 94, you're going to have to build a bridge to go across the stream into block 94.
I don't know the details of what the design will look like. What I'm suggesting to you is that in the consolidation of the lands, you're able to see there's access on Peel Street, Lake Forest Drive, and McNabb Street at the north, which is being cut off here. Sorry about my screen.
So I'm kind of telling you, having lived right across the street from where you're thinking Peel Street's going to access it, that the property's back onto it. It's environmental hazard. The stream goes right up to the back of the properties. I don't think that this is good use of land for parkland. I'd like to know who, again, has walked this, has looked at it. I took the vice deputy mayor through. We both have walked to see the stream. It is environmental hazard. They're saying that that section isn't, but it's a natural stream that crosses the road on Peel Street right at the corner of the town shed. It runs along Peel Street to Grenville Street, where it then goes in, diverges and goes in behind the houses. So I don't like block 94 or block 44, whatever you want to call it on whatever map, as being the dedicated parkland. It's too close to the houses. It's next to environmental hazard. It's next to a natural spring-fed stream. I think we need to be looking at another section, which I guess would be the bottom of 95 behind the townhouses on 96. But again, we need to have trees that are planted to block off the town shed. There needs to be a lot of trees planted in there, but that's my thought. And unless we have that guarantee that we're going to be looking at this, because I don't think it was done properly. Next to the stream that's there, they've taken the stream out, they put rocks in. It's like a rock garden now. Next to that, block 93 is the stormwater management. I don't even want to call it a pond because it's so big and deep. I like the idea of all the houses, but this area of parkland, I just can't support.
So we need to, can we just stop sharing screen for a second so I can see everybody? So we need to stay focused on what process we're talking about here and what we can affect with, or what is affected by the decision we're making here this evening. So we have a subdivision agreement before us. What the deputy mayor is raising is, if I'm understanding him correctly, and he can correct me if I'm not understanding him correctly, is that block 44 is not, in his view, suitable for parkland in this development, that some other piece of property would be more suitable, I think is what the deputy mayor is saying.
Yes.
And so my question to the director, to the CAO is, does this subdivision agreement determine which pieces of land in here will be dedicated as parkland, or has that determination been made previously, or will it be made subsequently to this discussion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the parkland has been dedicated as part of the draft plan process as parkland. That is that block Vice Deputy Mayor Matheson was talking about. I think he was saying 45. The environmental hazard land and the stormwater management block have also been defined such that we can put the passive park uses through those blocks. So the lands will all be used together. The environmental protection land also, the language in the zoning and OP will allow us to have some park uses on that Lake Forest Drive. So we do have the ability to put park equipment throughout those three pieces of those three blocks as we see fit through that separate agreement.
But just to clarify though, this layout in terms of lots, which lots will be conveyed, which lots will be built on, the picture before us here, that was determined by Southampton Council and agreed to 25 years ago.
No.
That's
That
what
is-
we're hearing from staff. Is that the staff's view?
Through you, Mr. That is my view. This draft plan was approved at that time.
So, I mean, our ability to change this lot fabric, Southampton Council set the lot fabric. Now, what we're doing now is discussing a subdivision agreement, and the agreement is essentially the municipality and the developer agreeing on what will be required for the municipality to take ownership of the various works within the development once it's constructed, as well as essentially that. So we're not designing the lot fabric here tonight, and we can't affect the lot fabric through the subdivision agreement. So as much as we may agree or disagree with the question of where the parkland is and whether or not it's appropriate, this is a decision that was made by a previous council a couple of decades ago, with the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I totally understand that. However, if you want to go back to a couple of decades ago, lots 1 to 6 on McNabb Street were dedicated as parkland. So somewhere, somehow that has been changed. How we do it, I don't care, but block 45, which is the environmental hazard area, that's the last stand of trees that are left in that area. I do not want to see that all reduced to nothing again. But if I could make one request, from here on in, whenever we get a picture like this, or I like to see the developer providing us an aerial drone footage view of it. That way we have a better understanding of exactly what is where, what it looks like. And I like to see that with all of our developments, the committee of adjustment, planning, all that stuff. Hand-drawn pictures like this don't give you the idea of what you're actually looking at. But if we could get an overhead drone shot, we'd be able to understand where this stream goes, what trees are left, where are we actually talking? Because as I said, I grew up there, I played in there, the streams, the forest, I know that like the back of my own hand. And I know that looking at block 44 right now, we cannot change the subdivision. I like the subdivision. I just want to see an amendment, as the vice deputy mayor put in, that allows us to get a better section of land, because that is not good use for parkland.
I mean, yeah, so just to say that, and just to be very clear, I just want to be clear on the process before we move on, that, we cannot, there's no amendment that we can make to the subdivision agreement to change the lot fabric. So, I mean, we can decide whether we can decide to approve or not to approve the subdivision agreement, but understand that the subdivision agreement does not define the lot fabric. The vice deputy mayor.
Well, just to finish up, I think, I suspect our hands are pretty much tied at this point, I think. What I'm hearing, and this, back in the 1980s, 1990s, the provincial government, played a major role in approving these plans of subdivision. This is a 25, 30-year-old agreement, but was reconfigured, redlined back in 2007 when the change happened, and that some of that, what was supposed to be parkland, I do believe did disappear, but that was 14, 15 years ago. So, but I suspect our hands may be tied. My comment tonight really is about access. I think we can do a nice job with a trail system through there. I think we can do a nice job with the parkette, the east side of the property. Councillor Grace, we chatted today about perhaps around stormwater retention ponds, some butterfly gardens with some benches. I just think they need to come back, show to us that there's room for a truck to get in there for emergencies and grass cutting equipment into that block in behind those 6 houses on McNabb. There's got to be a way in there, because right now what I'm seeing is that lot is a little bit landlocked, and somehow we got to widen that access from 4, 5, 6 feet to, in my view, 8, 10 feet access. So that's my concern, and if I'm hearing from staff that they'll make it work. So that I'll be supporting. I think it's great. The 10 new secondary dwelling suites. It's a good plan of subdivision that way. We've got 10 new units, but we just have to fix that one area of concern we have.
And to clarify, I think it's more than just making it work. What we heard is that there will be a subsequent agreement to this agreement out detailing exactly how that parkland will be developed. So So we have a whole other set of negotiations to go through to get to that point. Are there further questions or comments to the recommendation? I don't hear any, so you've heard the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right, so that moves us on then to the second report, which is a staff report on the traffic bylaw update and the director.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Since this bylaw update was first presented, we've received 75 comments from the public, and where possible, we reviewed them and incorporated them into this version of the proposed changes. You can see by the comments that were appended, some of the comments need to be addressed next year with new traffic counts. New stop signs are proposed at Bruce and Joseph, Ivings Drive at Stickle, Stafford and Gustavus Streets because of these comments and the requests for reviews. We also modified the speed limit of the 40 to 60 transition at concession 6. We're going to keep the 40 at the same location and then have the 60 from that location to side road 1314. This was to shift it east from the entrance of the new sports field because of the hill. Concession 10 also, we had questions about having so many different speed limits along its length. So when we look at the section to the west of the highway, we remain the same recommendation with the 40 kilometer being extended to 500 meters past the trail and then 60 to the highway. But on the east section of the highway, we're looking at consolidating that change and making it 60 all the way to Dull Side Road. And at the bend at 60, then it will turn to 80 to Bruce Road 3. We also had a number of comments about Miramichi Bay Road and the 30 kilometer being too slow, causing people to speed and pass. So for the section that does not have any erosion damage, we're looking at reverting it back to the 40 kilometers per hour. And finally, the McEwen Bridge project required the speed limit to be changed to be 60 over the bridge because of the design factors. And so we've made that change as well.
Okay, thank you. So there's a recommendation. I'll read it, then we can take questions or comments. It's recommended that council pass a bylaw to amend the traffic bylaw. Questions or comments from members of the committee? We'll start with Councillor Mayette, and then we'll get Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do have a possible motion to change this, but could the director just clarify one thing? Since the agenda came out on Thursday, you've made a change with regards to the recommendations for concession 6 speed limit changes. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it is not correct. Since the August date, we've made, or since the August presentation, we've clarified and made that 40 kilometers at 500 meters past the, it was originally said 500 meters past the entrance to the sports field. We're leaving it where the sign is today. So that sign that's on concession 6 will not change. That will be the distance in the bylaw.
So it reads here 40 kilometers to 1,000 meters or 1 kilometer east of Highway 21, which is 500 meters further than where the transition from 40 to 80 goes now, right?
I believe it's the same space, same spot on concession 6. I can double or check that again, but the kilometer should be where the sign exists today.
The sign that says 80 starts.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, well, I would like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we reconsider this recommendation, and I would like to perhaps use a visual aid to explain my rationale. If I could share my screen, that would be helpful.
I'm not sure that that's in order, Councillor. I don't know, I'd ask Linda's opinion on that. Members are permitted to speak for 10 minutes to items on the committee of the whole, but I'm not certain there's any provision to present visual items.
That would be my opinion as well, Mr. Mayor. Procedural bylaw says a member may speak to an item.
Yeah, so I don't believe that's in order, Councillor. You can speak to the item, but we can't, none
All
of us
right.
can show anything on.
All right, then I would like to make a motion that the speed transition that is being corrected on concession 6 be that the 40 kilometer zone ends where it ends now, which is at the top of the hill at just east of the Lamont Sports Park entrance, and that it transitions to 60 kilometers an hour for 500 meters as per the minimum distance in the Transportation Master Plan. And from that point, it transitions back to 80 kilometers an hour. Now,
Maybe, can I just interrupt you, David? Maybe
Yeah.
is there a map of that in the presentation, Amanda, that could be shared? I mean, I think it would be appropriate to share something that staff has already shared. I'm just having trouble picturing what the councilor is suggesting, and I get why I wanted to share it. Unfortunately, it's not in order, but if there is a way, is that part of the presentation somewhere?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's in the presentation from August. I can.
Well, that's fine. It's been
pull
presented to
that up.
council, so
Yep.
I bring that up and share the screen so that the councilor can show us what he means.
So yeah, essentially the 40 kilometer zone starts at Highway 21 lights at CAW Road and Concession 6, and it extends east to just past the entrance to the Lamont Sports Park, or where the last house on the left-hand side is. And then it transitions currently to 80 kilometers an hour. And that was identified initially by me when the Transportation Master Plan came out, that transition from 40 to 80 was inconsistent with the recommendations of the Transportation Master Plan. And so the expectation was that there would be a transition from 40 to 60, and then transition up to 80 at the appropriate space. And it's my opinion that the appropriate space is 500 meters after the 40 kilometer ends. And so I made a submission during the comment period over the past month since we had this recommendation explained to us. And as far as I can tell, reading through the 75 comments that were received, mine was the only one that dealt with anything to do with Concession 6. And I was asking for, just as I had explained it, that this be the recommendation. And instead of it's actually been rolled back the other way. The 40 kilometer zone has been, in fact, pushed out to a full 1 kilometer from Highway 21, which is well down past where it currently ends, and another 1 kilometer of 60 zone to the next to 1314 side road. And then past 1314 side road, heading east on Concession 6 is 80 kilometers an hour. And that's what's recommended. So the justification that was mentioned in the comment section was that the change in elevation and sight lines were inconsistent on the bridge, on the bridge over Mill Street. And so that bridge, I went out to that bridge this week, and a little bit of history. It's called the Scott Bridge, and it was erected in 1969 by Loby bridge builders, who are the same bridge builders we're currently using on the McEwen Bridge. And it was done under the overview of Reeve Pollock and councillors Lamont, Bryce, Enns, and Dahl, who were, and George Geyer was the road superintendent at the time. And that bridge replaced a single lane bridge. And when it was erected, it was done so with the intention of not only having a 2-lane bridge, but having the sight lines and the elevation changes corrected so that it could handle vehicles at what was then 50 miles an hour, and today is 80 kilometers an hour. And so the comment that was put into the attachment is that the sight lines are inadequate. And I took a picture of the sight lines from the west side of the bridge, and it's true, there is impaired sight lines, but it's not because of the design of the road. It's because the trees along the bank of Mill Creek have been allowed to grow untrimmed to such a height that you can't see around the corner. Because when they designed that bridge and that the new approachment, they did so with sight lines in mind. So it's not a matter. I think we're using we're making a correction by changing the speed limit, is what's being proposed, when we should be making a correction by improving the sight lines by trimming the trees on town property. And further, it said that the traffic engineer, it doesn't mention who the traffic engineer is, but it said the traffic engineer made this recommendation. And I can only assume that this traffic engineer isn't somebody who necessarily lives in our community, but somebody like myself who has lived on this road, and I travel this road multiple times every day of my life for the last 25 years. And I've done it in winter, summer, rain, snow, hail, any condition you can think of. And there's no difficulty with maneuvering that bridge at 80 kilometers an hour. That's what it was designed for back in 1969, and designed for vehicles of 1969 and prior. I mean, the vehicle technology and handling these days has come light years since the vehicles of 1969. As I alluded to, I have a 1968 car in my garage outside, and I can attest that its cornering ability is a mere fraction of what modern cars can do. So from the Transportation Master Plan, one of the excerpts says, vegetation management, vegetation maintenance activities, including the installation of root barriers and trimming of shrubs and trees, should be carried out to avoid encroachments onto active transportation facilities and to maintain sight lines. So this is the recommendation of the Transportation Master Plan, that we need to improve the sight lines and not necessarily change the speed limit to compensate for impaired sight lines. The Transportation Master Plan is clear that it says a transition zone from one speed to another should be no more than 500 meters. So there's plenty of space to have the 40 transition up to 60 for 500 meters, which brings you to about the top of the next hill, which is just past where the entrance and exit would be for the new proposed employment land development. And speaking of the employment lands development, I anticipate that one of the justifications for extending the 40-kilometer zone out as far as it is anticipation of increased traffic once these employment lands are developed. Now, if that happens to be the case, when these employment lands are developed and the traffic studies are conducted at that time, and they determine that a modified speed limit from 60 down to 40 would be adequate, then I think we should give that, or the council at the time should give that serious consideration, because let's be honest, that we only just changed the zoning on that land. The timelines to get infrastructure and actual road construction in that area is years to come. That's not going to happen this year or next year. This is going to be some future council, whether we're on it or not. So my justification is that the road was designed in 1969 by the aforementioned engineers and road constructors, bridge constructors, and that this is a rural road. This is not a urban road. And it seems to me we're attempting to implement urban road methodology on country roads. I've been speaking to many of my neighbors over the past few weeks, and all of them were either unaware that this was taking place, and when I made them aware, they were dumbfounded that this would be classified as a 60-kilometer road. It simply doesn't meet the justification once you take out the impaired sight lines for that curve down the bottom. And if you look at the curve from an aerial point of view, which was included in the original map, you can see that the curve in the road is actually very minimal. They went to great lengths to build a bridge which did not run perpendicular to the river. It ran on an angle across the river just for that defined purpose, to take that curve out of the road. Certainly, is there a downslope and an upslope? There is, absolutely. But I can tell you with 100% certainty, I could count on in one or two fingers the number of incidents that have happened on that section of road. And the couple that I'm thinking of were during heavy ice storm situations. But normally that road is navigable under just about any condition. So that is my motions, Mr. Mayor. And I would be looking for a seconder to that motion.
Sure. So let me just clarify it first. So what you're asking for, Councillor, is so at present, the road is 40 kilometers an hour from Highway 21 until just east of the entrance of Lamont Park. The proposal, and there it transitions to 80. That's how it is, right? That's how it is right now.
Yes.
The proposal that is in the director's report is to maintain the 40 kilometer an hour from 21 to the sports field entrance, then transition to 60 from that location all the way to side road 1314, which is well past the bridge you've mentioned and out into the township a ways, and then from there transition to 80 kilometers an hour. That's what's currently proposed by the director. What you're requesting, the change you're requesting, is to maintain the 40 kilometer an hour from Highway 21 to just east of the sports field entrance, and then go to 60 for 500 meters, for a distance of 500 meters, and then transition to 80. That, am I encapsulating what you're suggesting correctly there?
You've got it down pat, yes.
So that is what that's what is being requested. So there's a motion. Is there a seconder for the motion to make that change? And Councillor Carr seconds it. So we can have some discussion on it, and the director wanted to make a comment. The director.
Sure, through Mr. May I share my screen from that old report?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So this line here where you see the 40 kilometer, there is a small creek that runs under the road where that blue line is. That is where I believe the 40 kilometer hour sign is. So we'll go out and field verify that distance before it comes back to council in 2 weeks to have the distance exactly correct for where it becomes the 40.
That's the 80. That's the 80 sign is there.
At one side it's 40 and one side it's 80 because they change at the same place. So if you're going westbound, this is where the 80 turns to 40. And if you're going eastbound, it's where the 40 turns to 80. So that will be the actual measured distance that we'll put into the bylaw for the 40 kilometer limit. Then we'd have the temperature measurement plan would recommend at least a kilometer to go between the two. So you need 500 to go from 40 to 60 and 500 to go from 60 to 80. What they're saying is that would end up in this area here where there is the vertical, horizontal, and a bridge. And they recommended that just for decision-making purposes, that this is a cleaner spot, a better place to put that transition. So the Transportation Master Plan engineer is the same person that we looked to ask this question of, and they're also the ones that did the traffic impact study for the employment lands. So those two things are taken into account with this recommendation.
So before us is what is recommended. This picture is what you're recommending right now. Is that correct, Amanda? And what Councillor Mayette and Councillor Carr have put on the table would be to move the 80 kilometer an hour transition to point to about where they're suggesting you would move the transition from 60 to 82. That's from 40 to 60. They're not proposing to change that. So the transition from 40 to 60 stays the same in their resolution, but they're suggesting changing the location of the transition from 60 to 80 or from 80 to 60. Do you have an idea about where it would be if we were to pass their resolution?
I believe it would be along where this red line is, just because if this is 1,000, then half of that. So this distance here would be where that 60 changes.
Mr. Mayor, could I just comment for a second?
Yeah.
Just for clarification purposes, the distance between Highway 21 and concession 13 or side road 1314 is 1.25 miles or 2.2 kilometers. So if you draw an imaginary line about halfway through, that's about the 1.1 kilometer spot, which is just about below the S in lands, right? And where it says employment lands, if you went right in that area, that's about the halfway mark, right? And that, which is coincidentally right about the crest of the land elevation, the crest about there. So that's what I'm suggested is the 500 meters of 40 kilometer per hour and 500 meters of 60 kilometer an hour, and the rest of the stretch, which is about another 1.1 kilometers of 80 kilometer an hour zone, which means it's going to ramp up the speed from 40 to 60 to 80 as you go down stretch of road.
So here's the thing. I want council to be very clear on what it's doing before it makes changes to speed limits on the roads anywhere. I'm wondering if, because this is clearly a controversial one here, if we should defer the resolution and defer the decision on this particular road and have a separate report come back detailing it, showing us a map of the alternatives and letting council choose with some, because I want to know, I've seen a couple of estimates about where this transition will be. There are estimates on both parts, I think both from the director and from the councillor. In this case, estimates aren't good enough. Council has to know exactly what it's doing when it comes to speed limits. So I think I wonder if council would be amenable to deferring the resolution now before us and the decision before us this evening to move this particular item forward for a more detailed report at our next meeting before moving on to the bylaw, because I'm nervous, frankly, about making changes without fully understanding exactly what's happening. So is that something that council could consider, Councillor Schreider?
Yes, thank you. And through you, I was going to suggest something similar. I think where my reservation is that we have the trail system and then an entrance into a park. And to me, just seeing it on a map, I'm on Google Maps right now, and then Amanda did a great job of putting her map up there. But I think in order to completely understand what Councillor Mayette is proposing, I need to see where that is with regards to the entrance of the trail, the sports park. So I'd be happy to
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
We'll let the councillor finish.
Yeah, I think my concern, I think Dave, just a wonderful job on the history, and I think that you bring to light also the safety concerns with regards to sight lines, not necessarily the way that the road was constructed way back when. I also go back to some conversations that we had as well with speed and snowmobiles and the use of that we had talked about over the last little while as well. So I would feel more comfortable deferring this and doing a little bit more homework on it before making a decision tonight, for myself personally though. But I do appreciate Dave's homework that he's done so far.
Okay, Councillor Mayette.
I was just going to point out to Councillor Schreider that the entrance to the Lamont Sports Park, the trail, all of the municipal infrastructure is well within the 40-kilometer zone. That's not changing. That's the way it is today. And that's not what I'm proposing to change. I'm in fact proposing to just exactly leave that the same, and just make the transition from 40 to 60 to 80, all within the first mile and a quarter, 2.2 kilometers. And do it on a gradual basis, so that, and even where the proposed employment lands are going to be under my proposal, my amendment, would also be 60 kilometers an hour. But I invite the mayor's suggestion that we take this out and do a more detailed look at it, and have encourage each council member, committee member here to go out and have a look at that area. I mean, I'm intimately familiar with that road, as are a number of my residents, and I believe the director received correspondence today from at least one, maybe more, people who live on that road, who just recently became aware of these proposed changes and are concerned as I am with them.
So is there a resolution to defer the resolution currently before us and to defer decisions this evening with regard to speed limits on concession 6? Moved by Councillor Grace, or seconded by Councillor Schreider. Any discussion to the deferral? Seeing none, all in favor? That's deferred. All right, so we'll move on to other discussions about other parts of the resolution before us. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm glad to see that Bruce and Joseph has become a four-way stop all-way. I'd like to see a pedestrian activated, or make sure that we have crossing guards there. Like I said, the amount of homes and children that are back there now has far surpassed even what I could have thought. And there's just the safety hazard. It only takes one accident, and I don't want one accident. I have a concern, well, a question about the 10th. With it is, we all know it's a speedway when you go west from Highway 21. So Amanda, could you confirm for me 500 meters past the rail, past the Woodland Trail crossing? Is that at the top of the hill or just by, whereabouts is that? If you could put your map back up, that would be good again, because I have another question on the east side as well.
Sure, I'll just pull it up. I closed that agenda, so just give
Sorry.
me 1 minute, no problem. So Vice Deputy Mayor Matheson, here is a sign. So you can see 40 kilometers.
Is that
existing
that's basically at the top of the hill?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm
yeah,
good with
so
that.
just where, if you think where the Woodland Trail or the Beaner Trail comes out at the top of the hill at the back of the subdivision, and then it goes down the hill towards the pumping station, it's approximately in that area.
Okay, I like to make sure that it's at the top of the hill because the access to Woodland, and then there's the parking lot on the south side. It's a blind spot, so making sure people are good. Now, correct for me then, what you want to do is from that point all the way to the Dall Side Road is 60? Or is that section where it's on your map says 50 kilometers to remain, is that still to remain?
Through Mr. Mayor, no, this is what was presented in August, but there were a number of comments received, or a couple, about making this a consistent speed limit. So if you see my cursor wraps around the corner, this curve is 60 kilometers for the curve. And so this would all be 60 all the way down to the 40.
Okay, my concern is we have the rail trail crossing, we have the pit crossing, and we have a 6 or 7 houses, or sorry, probably closer to 15 houses in that section until you crest the hill at the Chapel Side Road. I'd still like to see that 50K remain from the highway to Chapel Road, just because of transportation. You get the big trucks coming out of the pit, and it's pretty hard to stop when somebody comes out of the rail trail, or you got the police corner. I think it's too busy a road to go up to 60 right off the bat. So I'd like to make have you inspect that or make a motion where I would like to see it remain as 50 all the way to Chapel Road.
Can we just stop sharing the screen for a minute? Thank you. So we do have a motion from the deputy mayor to retain 50 kilometer speed limit on concession 10 as it is today. Is there a seconder for that motion? The vice deputy mayor seconds it. And are there questions or comments then? The vice deputy mayor, and I saw Councilor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I support our deputy mayor on this. I said at the last meeting, and I'll say it again this evening, I'm not going to be in favor of increasing speed limits where they don't need to be increased, and where we can decrease, we should be decreasing. I think people's life just needs to slow down a little bit, and if it takes an extra 5, 10, 15 seconds to get where you're going, to allow for public safety, for cyclists, pedestrians, I just think it's the right thing to do. So I support our deputy mayor on this, and we shouldn't be raising that to a 60, and I just think it is the wrong change.
So Councilor Smith next, and then I have, well, you're not, so I had Councilor Mayette, then I'll get Councilor Carr, and then I'll get Councilor Schreier.
Who's that?
Yep, there you are.
Oh, is it me?
Yeah, it was you. Sorry.
Okay, I was going to, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I would like to make a motion that this item be also removed from the recommendation today for further consideration at a future meeting.
You're looking to defer the resolution on the floor? Is that right?
Defer the resolution on the floor and remove this concession 10 recommended changes just like we did on concession 6 for further consideration outside of the overall recommendation today.
Okay, so there's a motion to defer this, and any further discussion on concession 10. Is there a seconder for the motion to defer?
I think Councillor Schreider had her hand up.
Sorry, I saw you pull your hand down, Councillor Schreider, so I wasn't sure. Is anybody seconding the motion to defer? I'll ask again, any seconder? See no seconder, so the motion is not before. We'll go back to the main motion. Councillor Schreider, you had a comment?
Just a question, yes. Can Donnie repeat again what his motion is?
The motion is to retain the speed limit on concession 10 east of Highway 21 as it is today at 50 kilometers an hour.
To the Chapel corner side road.
Just
Okay.
as it is today. No, there'd be no change at all.
Oh, no changes there.
on the
Okay,
east
thank
side-
you.
on the east
Sorry.
side of 21. Councillor Carr.
Sorry, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to clarify too, I wouldn't have had a problem of seconding Dave's motion there, but just to be clear, when Deputy Mayor had asked in regards to the 40-kilometer-an-hour change, now I'm in a different spot again. He asked specifically if it was at the top of the hill, is what I think I remember hearing there. The answer I heard was yes. The picture I saw was 40 kilometers an hour to about, I'm going to say, the exit of the pumping station. The tree line to me is the top of the hill there. So from where the line on the map shows to what was answered to what I think I perceive from the area I know, I don't think line up. That's why I wouldn't second that one, because I feel like if we're going to change that upper part, we should be changing the lower part if that's what Don was looking, Deputy Mayor was looking for there. I just want to be clear on that.
The resolution on the floor is only dealing with the east side of 21. To retain the speed limit as it is on the east side of 21. It doesn't relate to anything on the west side of 21. So let's deal with that, can we? And then if you have other comments about other parts of concession 10, that's fine. We can talk about that after, but we are dealing specifically right now with a motion about the east side of 21 and the speed limit there. So let's just finish that off, and then we can go on to other stuff, okay? Any further questions about the resolution? And just to be clear, the resolution is to retain the speed limit on the east side of 21 as it is today on concession 10. All right, I see no further questions or comments. All in favor of the resolution? That's carried. Okay, so that's good. Further comments? Did you have another comment about did you want to repeat that comment, Councillor Carr, about on the west side?
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to be clear. From what I thought I had heard there, Deputy Mayor did ask that it was going to change to 40 at the top of the hill, if I'm not mistaken. And the answer I heard was yes, but the picture and the lines that I see do not line up with what we answered, I guess.
Maybe we can just get the director to try to clarify that, can we? And then I'll come to the Deputy Mayor.
Sure, and thank you for the question through. Yes, Councillor Carr, that is the image from the August date, so that does show it near the tree line, but you need to come to the top of the hill and just into the farm field a bit to meet that kilometer that I've recommended in the staff report. So the image and my words did not line up, but was used for reference.
Okay, that's why I wasn't following it then. Thank you for the clarification.
Excellent, thank you. The Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to help Councillor Carr there. The new report said 500 meters past the trail entrance, which takes us to the top of the hill. I just wanted to clarify that as well. But thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments with regard to anything else in the recommendation? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Amanda, for taking and seriously considering all of the public input. And I found the chart where you provided that input very informative and well organized. I did have a question about about a comment that was included in those questions, and that I think I know that I also asked staff about in response to requests from a couple of residents who live in the Lake and Bay area. There was a request to consider a stop sign as one is driving towards the beach, the Bay Street Beach, from the east. And several residents have complained about visibility issues there. Is that something that I know the report said that some that all of these requests were considered, and that some of them may not be, were not considered to be necessary at this time. Is that something that staff might consider next year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did look at Lake and Bay, and the volumes just aren't there. With the lake being or Bay being a dead end at the treatment plant, we just don't see it being necessary in that area. And the stop sign request policy says that we would not review it again for another 3 years, since we did review it this year.
Okay, thank you.
The Deputy Mayor, and then Councilor Schreider.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along with Councilor Grace, that corner is kind of akin to South and the Johnson Highway or Huron Street. Would it be possible to make that street from Huron to Lake Street parking on the south side only? That way, when you're coming down Lake Street to Bay Street, you can see around the corner and people can see as they're getting ready to turn. But if we limit parking to just one side of the street, because with both sides being as busy as they are, because Bay Street was a big destination this year, and you've got people from the tourist camp coming down there, the visibility is very hard. So if we could limit the parking to one side, I think that would solve that issue.
Can we reserve that question for the next agenda item, Deputy Mayor, which is to do with the parking bylaw? Okay, I had Councilor Schreider next.
Thank you, and through you, and I just want to say thank you to Amanda as well. Lots of comments received, and I know a lot of information going back and forth, so I really appreciate it. Did we look at, or maybe this question, I'm not sure if this is appropriate right now or not, but about the 10th concession in Highway 21, and perhaps what future plans there would be with regards to, would we look at a traffic light there? Would we look at a roundabout there? Any thought to that right now, Amanda? Or is it too early for that discussion?
Thank you. And through Mr. Mayor, the Transportation Master Plan does recommend a roundabout be investigated for that intersection. I believe it's 2025. We have a couple of years before we look at that intersection, though.
Okay, perfect. And just a second question. I don't know if it was last year or a few months ago, I'm sorry, but Mr. Klein, Jim Klein, he did a presentation to council with regards to some initiatives with regards to stop signs and reflective. I didn't have a chance to look it up, to look at the date, but it just sparked to me when I was reading the agenda this weekend is what came of our meeting with him, and do we have any action items with regards to follow up with Jim on his proposal at all?
Thank you, through you, sir. I have not met with him. I have reached out to other colleagues. If you know the flashing stop signs like in Huron County, those colleagues, I've talked to them. There's issues with the legality of a lot of that stuff with the Highway Traffic Act and what the signs need. So I'm trying to contact MTO to see a bit more about that before I meet with them. But I did hope to have that done as part of this. But until then, I need to follow the Highway Traffic Act for reflectivity of our stop signs.
Absolutely. No doubt at all. Support that 100%. It just sparked something in my memory when I was reading this weekend. So I appreciate you following up with him. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Amanda, I just wanted to again, say thank you as well. I found that Councilor Grace mentioned this, but 75 comments I read through yesterday, and from members of the public, and some excellent comments. I really like your feedback on the right-hand side in the comment section, and to set the record straight in terms of what things you can do, we can't do, what the study results have said, and so on and so forth. So I found that really, really helpful. There's some excellent comments, and Mr. Mayor, to the public, thank you for their input, because there's been a lot of input into this process. So again, thanks, Amanda, for a great job on. I know this has been a really big task, big chore, and you've really done a great job with the report. On Saugeen Beach Road, on page 3 of your report, we talk about a 30-kilometer zone. I know down here there in Saugeen Beach Road area, there's 40 kilometers posted in a couple of sections. So what are you saying? You're saying, Amanda, that from the bottom of County Road 25, which turns into Saugeen Beach Road, right through to concession 4, is that correct? Is it all 30 kilometers now, Amanda?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I haven't changed it from what we changed last year. So the 30 kilometers stays the same. I'm just trying to look up what that was.
Okay.
I believe it's just to the stop sign where you turn. So at that, the name of the street is at George Street.
That's the corner of George, and that's my point. In your schedule, you do say Saugeen Beach Road. I know there are some residents down here would like to see that being consistent right from the bottom of County Road 25 along the beach area, right through to Heights Grove Beach, which has gotten busier and busier and busier. This is probably the busiest summer I've ever seen for Heights Grove Beach. And that was my question. Was there consideration given? When I read this, I thought, oh, good, it worked out. You know, we got 30 kilometers from the bottom of County Road 25 right to 4th Concessional 30. So what you're saying is that that's not the case. Are you saying that only to George is 30, and then from George Street southerly to concession 4 is 40, will remain 40? Is that what you're saying?
Through Mr. That is correct. We're not changing that speed limit. We didn't have a request to look at that, so I did not look at that again this year.
Darn! I thought we had a home run there. I thought we were 30 all the way. So okay.
I think it's important to remember, though, and as the director sort of alluded to there, people can request changes to speed limits on streets. What council has established through the Transportation Master Plan is a process whereby Amanda and her staff will review those requests, and the limit may change or it may not change depending on that analysis. But folks can always request a change, and our staff will analyze it and determine whether it's appropriate. So, you know, folks on Saugeen Beach Road or any road want to see something like that happen, make a request to Amanda, and those changes can occur.
So sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, carry on.
I thought you were done. Just to follow up then. So, Amanda, if residents on Saugeen Beach Road from George Street to concession 4 said, hey, look, we really like to see that a 30 km zone. You obviously haven't heard a lot from them, I guess. So what's the process in terms of petition? How long is it? 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year from the time that the requests come forward? We'll say all the residents down in Saugeen Beach Road decide to sign a petition to become 30. Should have done it maybe 6 months ago, but they didn't. How long would that process be then?
Through Mr. Mayor, it would take a full year. To go down to the 30, you're going to need to look at making it a community safety zone as well. The speed limits are 40, and 30 kilometers need to be reserved for very specific reasons. You do find that people get frustrated and speeding is increased when we have that speed that low. Right now we have the 30s in the areas that have the erosion, and those are only temporary. And the intention is that North Shore Road will be put back to 40 when it's safe to do so. So there's a traffic calming policy. That information is available on our website on how to go forward to do that piece, which would get you that community safety zone and traffic calming. Plus the same with the speed limit modification form is there. I do prefer to have the update happen once a year to the traffic bylaw. So through the year, we'll do the analysis and then bring forward the proposal in late summer.
Thank you for that. Just a final comment. The Heights Grove Beach has become busier and busier and busier. We found the last couple of years in particular. So I think it's an area we do in the future need to keep an eye on for 30K. But thanks for listening.
Okay, I think we've had a really good debate on this particular item. Unless there's anything more very pressing that you want to see with this one, I'd like to get on to considering the recommendation. So we have just to remind everyone, we have given staff direction on one item here, and we have deferred another item. So the recommendation is that council pass a bylaw to amend the traffic bylaw. I don't think that needs to change. Staff have been given some direction as to what to bring back in that bylaw, I think is what we can take away here. So if there's nothing further, then I will ask all in favor of the recommendation. That's carried. Okay, so then that moves us on to the third one, which is a staff report on the parking bylaw update, and the director.
Thank you again, and through you again. From the comments, there was clarity added to the bylaw about the definition of no parking to an intersection. The Transportation Master Plan did recommend 10 meters, but Linda pointed out to me that the driver's handbook still refers to 9 meters. So in order to make it easier for new drivers, what I did is update where we define the 9 meters from in our bylaw. So it's from the end of rounding on the curb, and that becomes within that reasonable distance of 10 meters as well. And it's how we've been doing it. So it doesn't require any signs to be changed that way as well. We also had a request from a resident on Joseph Street last year or 2 years ago. We had changed the parking to prohibit it on both sides east of the crosswalk. And he found it unnecessary to remove all the parking there, asked if during outside school hours we could allow it on the south side. That would open up 1 or 2 spaces on Joseph Street for the residents there. So that has been changed. As well, St. Joseph's School had asked us to take a look at the parking on Gustavus Street. They're having some problems with parent drop-off and congestion. So we're looking at prohibiting parking during school hours on the north side of Gustavus between Stafford and Cake. The final change was as a request on Mill Street to change it from prohibiting it on the north side from prohibiting it on the south side to allowing it on the south side. And this aligns better with the sidewalk. So people that are parking there to use the beach can now get out of their cars and be straight onto the sidewalk instead of crossing the sidewalk. So we consider that a reasonable request as well.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is the council pass a bylaw to amend the parking bylaw. Questions or comments from members? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to have a little change put in where we look at Bay Street from Huron to Lake Street be parking on the south side only. That would prevent any accidents, opens up viewing, and makes it a safer road.
The director.
Mr. Mayor, I would appreciate being able to include this in the 2022 update and take the time to analyze that now, as we had told other people with these that after the September 3rd deadline for comments that we would consider them for next year instead of in this one that's coming in 2 weeks.
So we can treat the Deputy Mayor's request as a request and you'll include it in your analysis for next year. Is that satisfactory, Deputy
Yes,
Mayor?
sir. Yep.
All right, very good. Further comments to the parking bylaw changes? I don't see any. You've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, then that moves us on to Community Services, Parks and Recreation reports. And the first one is a staff report on the Southampton Snowmobile Club agreement, and the director.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor. In an effort to provide a safe passage for snowmobilers into Port Elgin, staff have met with the Saugeen Rail Trail, Bruce County representatives, and members of the Snowmobile Club to determine the most appropriate route that will accommodate active transportation users safely, as well as snowmobilers along the rail trail corridor at the Lamont Sports Park area. Staff would like to thank all parties in determining the route that will access the perimeter of the Lamont Sports Park leading south, then crossing the Saugeen Rail Trail at the southerly portion, and then heading north on the west side, which is the ATV trail to access the Walmart parking lot and the amenities at the south end of Port Elgin. The Snowmobile Club will ensure that the area is passable for their users and provide barriers that provide safety for all users on the trail. And finally, this addition to their 5-year agreement is a positive step forward for all users of the Saugeen Rail Trail.
Okay, thank you. There's a recommendation that council pass a bylaw to authorize the agreement with the Southampton Snowmobile Club for the continued use of municipal land. Questions or comments from members? Councillor Mayette, sorry, Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I would just like to show my support for this recommendation, and thanks to all those that worked so hard to bring this together. This is a long time coming, and this will go a long way to keeping our, not just our snowmobile users, but vehicular users and snowmobile users separate as possible. And this will make it much safer for everybody involved. So thanks very much, and I'll be supporting this.
Good, thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo Councilor Mayatte's comments, and Jane, thank you for the really good work you did on this one with the Saugeen Rail Trail Association, the Snowmobile Club. I attended the one site meeting over the course of the spring summer, and I just think it's a good use of Lamont Sports Park. It satisfies the needs of the Snowmobile Club, and the Saugeen Rail Trail Association were very cooperative, and this and the county and Bruce County have been very cooperative. So you really did a good job bringing all the partners together, and this was really created a win-win situation for all trail users. So good work.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? I just really want to echo that, having been involved myself in some of the discussions in the wintertime. I think it's a good agreement arrived at between parties who wanted to work together and did, and came up with a good compromise. And getting snowmobilers into Port Elgin is really important. And we want to make sure snowmobilers have good open access, particularly to the South End, where they can get gas and get food. And it's important for business and it's important for them. And we want to be able to do that without compromising the tremendous pedestrian only and cyclist only access that we have on the Saugeen Rail Trail. We don't want to compromise that either. And we have an agreement that's been able to achieve both of those things, which is outstanding. So thank you for your work, Jane, and to everyone who is involved. You've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That is carried. All right, and that moves us on to the second report, which is a staff report about Beaner's Bush to the 10th concession trail agreement. The director.
Thank you, and through you. This is another good news story this evening, and will certainly add to the inventory of trails already enjoyed in Saugeen Shores. A new wood chip 600-meter trail along the south side of the 10th concession will connect Beaner trails to the future Snyder subdivision, as well as gets patrons safely to the North Shore Trail. Construction is anticipated to be completed by summer 2022. And staff finally would like to sincerely thank the proprietor of Miramichi Farms for their generous donation to construct the trail at no cost.
Yeah, and I think council would like to echo that thanks as well. So there is a recommendation that council pass a bylaw to authorize the agreement for trail construction, Beaner's Bush 10th concession for the purposes of active transportation, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary documents. Comments, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I just I wanted to give a big shout out to Kathy and Brad Pride. They, Brad over the last 2 decades, maybe longer, has got his fingerprints on a whole lot of sections of trail here in the town of Saugeen Shores. And here's another section of trail. There was concern with the Blue Trail maybe disappearing in that new plan of subdivision with the Snyder subdivision. Brad stepped up to the plate, and Kathy, and said, "Hey, look, we'll build that trail at no cost to the town." And like, what a fine community partner he is, and trail developer. And so I hope that staff will be sending a letter of thanks. I'm assuming you will, Jane, to Mr. and Mrs. Pride. I think that's something that's very important that this council needs to support, is a letter of support, letter of thank you to Brad and Kathy Pride. It's just an amazing person with trail development, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I think the letter of thanks is a good idea. Vice Deputy Mayor, I think if you don't mind, I would like it to come from council. I would like to sign it, and I hope everyone is in agreement with that. I think council should offer its thanks on behalf of the municipality.
Absolutely.
So maybe Jane, can we arrange for that to happen?
Certainly.
Thank you. Are there further questions or comments? I don't see any. So you've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That's carried. Okay. So we're now on to 7.6, communications for action. And there is one item there, an AMO policy update, recognition of September 30th as a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. There's a resolution in here, and I'll just read the therefore be it resolved clause so that you get a sense of what it says. Therefore be it resolved that the council, in this case of the town of Saugeen Shores, does hereby commit to recognizing September 30th, 2021 as a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, National Orange Shirt Day, by sharing the stories of residential school survivors, their families, and communities. So that's a resolution put before us by AMO, and we'll look for direction from committee onto what we might do with it. Thoughts? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know the school system will be doing a lot with this through their classes. I know at the high school they have a lot of information prepared and will be put out. As long as we put something, I think if we put something up on our website, recognizing the day and what its importance is and significance, I think that's about as much as we can do. And we leave it to the education workers to help convey that message to the students.
I see the CAO popped online. Maybe she has an idea of what might happen should we pass a resolution to this effect.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I just wanted to highlight for council a couple of the other pieces that we're looking to do for September 30th, and I have an outreach in place to our neighbors at Saugeen First Nation to talk to them about this. We have been flying Every Child Matter flags at the town of Saugeen Shores for the month of September. Those flags will be lowered to half-mast on September 30th to recognize the date. We also are looking at or have advanced commissioning a permanent recognition through the artist Brent Henry that we're hoping to have in place in time for September 30th, again, as a permanent recognition of this date. Additionally, I've been working with our Human Resources Department to look at training and staff development that can be done around this issue, and specifically on inclusion and diversity training as well as part of that. So a comprehensive package that we can offer to staff. So there'll be an internal communication going out to staff that day as well. So we have a couple of external pieces as well as those internal pieces. With regards to this motion, I think it's up to council's discretion, but could be another piece that could be layered on to those events that we're planning. Thank you.
So I think the long and short of it is, if you choose to pass this resolution, we have lots that we can do to recognize September 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Let me put it this way: is there a mover and seconder to put it on the floor? Councillor Smith, Councillor Grace. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Okay. So that moves us then on to communications for information. There's 6 items there. Anybody have anything they want to draw out of there to discuss? Don't see anything. Anyone? Okay, so then that moves us on to the reports of department heads. 6 reports there, and the first one is an information report on bag tag landfill financing. And does the director wish to speak to the report?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to introduce it by the request was made a couple of years ago by yourself to investigate options for bag tags and the levy, and this is bringing that back. Any information through this meeting or afterwards will be considered as part of the budget proposals.
Yeah, as you pointed out rightly, this is a request from me, and so I first want to say thank you for doing the work on it and bringing it forward. I think it gives us some very good information. I'm still of the view that some change is warranted, and that this provides us some avenues where we could make some positive changes. But it's going to be a long night already, and I don't think anybody cares to debate the whole item this evening. I think the best thing to do would be to defer this to the budget. I'm going to make a similar budget council request at budget time, and this report can now be amended or appended to that, and council can discuss it at that time. Is that agreeable to everyone? Yeah. Okay, so that's what we'll do. Thank you, Amanda. So that moves us then on to the second one, which is information report, which is with an update on the declaration of the state of emergency. And does the Director of Protective Services want to speak to this? Or, well, in this case, he's the Community Emergency Management Coordinator. I guess I'll call him that for this purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the purpose of this report is to remind council we're in a state of emergency. We remain in a state of emergency since March 24, 2020. And at some point, we need to end that emergency. Over the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've seen other municipalities in Ontario end the pandemic emergency. Locally, just last week, we saw municipalities in Bruce County start to declare the emergency over. and this report is for council's discussion. It is solely your decision, Mr. Mayor, but I know you've been in consultation with the Emergency Control Group and with council on this topic. And I feel as your emergency management coordinator, we definitely saw a more conventional emergency just last week. And it's important to end emergency when appropriate. Unfortunately, COVID might be in our lives for a very long time, but the urgent need for an emergency declaration is now over.
Sure. So yes, it's my desire to hear from council about ending the emergency at this time. I think if I don't hear any strong objections to doing it, then I will proceed with ending it. But I'm keen to hear your thoughts. My view is that whenever possible, it's not a good idea or even appropriate to act unilaterally. Best to act in consultation and coordination with council. So I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. Councilor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I concur with the Director of Emergency Services and with yourself that the state of emergency was declared, and I still have my notes from March the 24th when it was declared in 2020 up front and center here, that it's not appropriate to carry that on for a extended period of time, and that the emergency declaration should be reserved for just that emergency, more conventional, hopefully, but emergency situation. So I would support the removal of that declared state of emergency forthwith. Thank you.
Thank you. Further input? I'm going to take your silence to mean that you generally agree with what Councilor Mayette said. And so I just, before we move on, so I will move to end the emergency. I'll do that as soon as I can get the appropriate paperwork before me and off to the ministry. But it's important, I just want to be clear that this local state of emergency does not bring into effect any of the pandemic restrictions that have been imposed by either public health or by the province. So restrictions with regard to gathering limits and occupancy and other things have been enacted by other levels of government or other agencies. So the end of our local emergency does not change those things that we need to be doing to protect ourselves from the pandemic. And it certainly doesn't mean the pandemic is over. It isn't, and we need to continue to do the things that we've been doing all along to keep ourselves safe. And if you haven't been vaccinated, you need to get vaccinated. And I also will point out that just like last week when with the weather that struck us last Tuesday, the emergency control group met the following morning. We didn't declare an emergency, but we did meet, and we can meet whenever we need to discuss important issues and take action if we have to. And if we see a situation arising where the pandemic does represent a true and present danger to the people of Saugeen Shores, we stand ready to declare an emergency again if we see that necessary. So thank you all for your input there, and we'll proceed as I've outlined. So that moves us on to the third item, which is an information report on capital project status updates and the treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report details second quarter financial update to council with results through June 30th. This particular report focuses on capital spending. Every project with budget or spending in the year is included in the list, and staff have given a status update and estimated completion date for each project. Capital spending is fairly low through the second quarter, but ramps up in the third quarter as projects ramp up through the summer months. There's no unusual spending within the capital accounts, which significantly exceeds budget or that poses risk to the town's annual results at this time.
Thank you. Questions for the treasurer? I don't see any. So how about the next report then, Dan, the information report on the operating financial results ending June 30th, 2021.
Yeah, thank you. Same thing on operating results. The report is very preliminary. It's difficult to properly adjust for all seasonality and spending patterns this early in the year or through June. So reported results are always not representative of what the end result will be. But that being said, staff are monitoring the accounts closely, and so far the results are well on track for a small budget surplus at year end.
Thank you. Questions for the treasurer? I don't see any, so thanks for those updates, Dan. Much appreciated. That moves us then on to item 5, an information report on the Municipal Innovation Council update and the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to be very brief, on August 26th, the Municipal Innovation Council received a resignation from their Municipal Innovation Officer, Dave Shorey. And I should just clarify for council, right now I am participating in the Municipal Innovation Council as Saugeen Shore's representative and the chair of the committee. So I've been tasked with advancing a resolution to this resignation. The report that is in front of you tonight really is to let you know where the Municipal Innovation Council is at. This report has been forwarded to all of the partnering municipalities that are participating in the Municipal Innovation Council. And to give you a bit of an update on where the projects are at, how they relate to the strategic framework that was presented to you in December, and just to acknowledge that the Municipal Innovation Council is working to recruit and resolve this issue around the resignation and plan to have a path forward in place in the very near future. I just want to also acknowledge that we are working directly with the Nuclear Innovation Institute to see if there's an opportunity to further integrate the Municipal Innovation Council into its operations there. And once those pieces have moved forward, in addition to a September 30th sort of work planning and priority setting session, we'll provide you with an additional update on how this transition will be handled going forward. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions for the CAO? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, and through you, no questions, just wishing Dave much success in his new role with Georgian College and to thank him for his contributions to the MIC. There have been great strides made in a short period of time, no thanks to him and other members of the committee, so thanks to him.
Agreed. Further comments or questions for the CAO? I don't see any. Thanks for this update. We look forward to hearing more from the Municipal Innovation Council, and it's nice to have frequent updates about what they're up to. So the final report is an information report on zero emission hydrogen, and the Director of Protective Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to answer any questions with regards to the information report. The report serves as an update to council, letting you know we have submitted in partnership with the local companies of the 7G network 7G fuel network to support hydrogen station locally. This is a grant administered by the Ministry of Natural Resources, and if we're lucky enough to be selected as one of their projects, much further detail and information will come back to council for consideration on site location and our involvement in the project.
Okay, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Phil. This is an interesting project. I've been following a lot of our energy projects along. Couple questions. One, because of the newness of this technology, will we be having quite a bit of public input into this? I imagine there'll be a lot of questions and concerns that we want to waylay before they get out of hand.
I should think there'd be a lot of public consultation, not only on the design, but location and users. They want to build a user base. If there's a fill station to be built locally, we want to make sure there's users that are willing to use the hydrogen.
I understand it's like a two-prong. To have the fill stations, you got to have the machinery, and to have the machinery, you got to have the fill stations. And following the NII minutes, I understand that they're also working along with some of this. Will we be working in conjunction with the NII on this project?
The NII has done a tremendous job on their work so far in the feasibility study, and we see them as a very likely partner as well, should this grant application be advanced.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further comments, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Phil. This is potentially very, very exciting. I have one question. Do you have any idea when you'll hear back about the grant application?
I don't. I can look that up and get back to you. I suspect with the federal grant, there'll be a couple of rounds. So if we're not included in the first round, possibly later, but we will. I can report back.
Oh, I'm just asking because I think it ties in nicely with the mandate of the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Committee, and we can at least include preliminary information in our report. Thanks.
Very good. Further comments? I don't say, well, thank you for your work on this, Phil. I think a lot of discussion at Bruce County, at the NII, has gone on over the last few years about the potential for hydrogen in our region because we have one of the world's largest producers of nuclear power in our region. The opportunity for us to produce what's known as blue hydrogen, the cleanest type of hydrogen available, is really ample here, and we could really enhance our region's role as a producer of carbon neutral energy. And I think that really is the future of our community and of our region in terms of where our economy is going. So continuing to be at the forefront of that and advancing it as you are doing is really important, and certainly look forward to hearing more about it going forward, and hope you're successful with the funding you're looking for. So that brings us to the end of the Committee of the Whole, and we'll do a real quick lightning round of announcements by members, and we'll start with the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, just to remind our viewing audience that we're having another vaccination clinic tomorrow at Saugeen District Senior School. If you haven't already done so, please get out and get vaccinated. It's very, very important. And secondly, we have the upcoming federal election on September 20th. If you haven't had a chance already to get out to one of the advance polls, please try that. If you see Councillor Smith, vote. You have a right to have a say in what's happening in government, so please get out and vote.
Good, thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a big shout out to Westero Power, Hydro One, and our public works staff. The job they did last Tuesday was, and Wednesday and Thursday and onward, is just incredible, and the help from the neighboring communities. They're our local heroes, right? They just did a tremendous amount of work around the clock. So thank you to them, and the Chamber of Commerce for the fireworks on Saturday, September 4th. were well done, and thank you, Saugeen Shores Chamber of Commerce, and I just wanted to also congratulate the Saugeen Shores Rotary Club, new Rotary Club in town, a very successful golf tournament I participated in with Councillor Schreider, and we had a very, very good time. And it was August 27th, and congratulations to them. I had another item, but I'm going to leave it to Councillor Grace or yourself, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to say a big thank you to Bill Streeter for plaque unveiling that happened over the long weekend that I attended, but I'll leave that up to Councillor Grace you to speak to.
Sure, okay. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And last Friday, Councillor Mayette and I had an opportunity to attend the Regional Steering Committee meeting for the Clean Energy Frontier program. We were introduced to the new director of the Clean Energy Frontier, none other than our very own Jessica, or our former Jessica Linthorne. So a welcome to her and congratulations on the new role. It was lovely to get to interact with her on a different format and also understand the different upcoming events and activities within that group as well. I'm hopeful that we can share some correspondence from that group in future meetings, and I'll leave it there.
Okay, very good. Councillor Schreiber.
Just to piggyback maybe on Vice Deputy Mayor's comments, as well as a shout out to our local vendors, our contractors. There's several companies in and around Saugeen Shores, Grey Bruce area that pitched in also to help us through this situation. So I think a shout out to them as well.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two items. One is I wanted to remind the public that this coming Friday at noon is the end for public participation in our Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Committee survey. So if you have not had an opportunity to do that, You can find it on the town website. I understand our communication staff is going to be putting that out again, sharing that on social media in the next day or two. So look for that. And we really value your input. The Vice Deputy Mayor already introduced this, but I did want to thank Bill Streeter, the chair of the town's Heritage Committee, and Tracy Edwards, our clerk who works with our Heritage Committee, for putting together a really wonderful ceremony on September 4th. The Saturday of Labor Day was held at the Plex, and it was to unveil the Women in Uniform plaque, which commemorated women veterans from World War I and World War II who came from Saugeen Shores. And Bill Streeter, who's our local heritage meister, just did a phenomenal job of researching, told wonderful tales of these women and what they contributed to our country's service during World War I and World War II. We had many family members who came from near and far to participate. And the representatives of our local legions also participated with providing color guards and really adding to the solemnity of the ceremony. And we actually had one of the women herself, 98 years old, who participated. And so anyway, thank you again to Bill. Thank you to Tracy, and thanks to all who participated.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great event. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Keep it short too. I'm going to echo the same sort of as the Vice Deputy Mayor and Councillor Schreider, to town staff and the hard work they put into the cleanup. I know myself, we were out on call and we got to witness some of the damage firsthand immediately after happening. And a big shout out right to our directors and our CAO. I know they were on scene and checking out the damage, within half an hour. It was really quick to see the town come together, right down to the staff at the town office that's answering the phones and dealing with all these complaints. I'm sure it's been overwhelming the last week as we've seen through this whole pandemic, and then we had our own little disaster here. But I just want to make sure we do the big shout out as we have to the town staff and the other municipalities that sent in all the equipment. And also I know contractors around town were offering up services they weren't looking to capitalize from, but they were just looking to help out, which was very nice to see a community come together in something like this.
Yeah, agreed. Councillor Mayette.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Briefly, I think the recognition was great around the table tonight. The only group wasn't recognized was neighbor to neighbor. I witnessed a great deal of neighbors coming across the street with chainsaws and people loading up their pickup trucks and trailers and helping each other out. It was great community spirit after the storm. And one other recognition, we have just recently received a intention from our long-standing Secretary of the Police Services Board, Georgina Elliott, to finally retire from that role. Georgina has been on the board as long as I have, and maybe Mr. Mayor, you probably remember how long she's been on the board. It's certainly measured in decades, and she's going to hang that role up, hang up her pen and her note-taking pad, which she did a phenomenal job keeping us on the straight and narrow on the board, and we recognize her long service and we appreciate her service, and we're going to try and find somebody to fill those big shoes. Thanks.
I don't think you're going to find anybody who can fill Georgina's shoes, but I think you'll find somebody to do the job anyway, I'm sure. But that's, yes, we'll certainly thank her for her work. Yeah, I just had a few things over the last week, but most of those things were sort of overwhelmed midweek by the events of last Tuesday, and you've all done a good job of thanking everybody in the community. I did want to add thanks specifically to our staff at the harbor who faced quite a challenge there all of a sudden after that storm, and did a really great job of protecting boats and equipment and people down there and pulling that together. I guess I will just add that we were Minister Thompson, MPP Thompson was in the riding, was in the, pardon me, in the community on Friday, and we toured her around and looked at the damage, and she has done some good work advocating for our community with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs when it comes to some disaster relief funding that may be available through the ministry. So that I want to thank her for her advocacy and for the work that's ongoing to try to recover some of the costs. You know, it's an interesting storm in that it's not a sort of a path of destruction like you might see from a tornado, but a broad area of destruction here and there all over the community, and several residences and several businesses sustained. Some businesses sustained what I would describe as devastating damage from that storm. I've seen it firsthand and can describe it that way. So we're working to try to help however we can to those folks, and trying to work with the province to see what funding might be available, both to assist the municipality with our losses. I think it's you know, the damage we sustained at the harbor is extreme and will be extremely expensive to repair, and some of the damage to our parks, et cetera, et cetera. And when you combine that with private sector losses, it's significant. And so we do hope that the province will step up and provide assistance, and we're working on that with our representative. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Smith, all in favor. The Committee of the Whole stands adjourned, and we'll reconvene at 9:10 for Council.
Mr. Mayor, we have all members present. We've reached 9:10. If you want to commence the council meeting, you may begin.
Okay, thank you, Linda. I'll call to order this regular council meeting. The second item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Asking a member if you have one of those. Seeing none, of course, you can declare one anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments. We have no public meetings, so that moves us on to adoption of the minutes. And I have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the council meeting of August 23rd, 2021, and the planning meeting of August 16th, and note and file the minutes of the Committee of the Whole of August 23, 2021 as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Grace, seconded by Mayette. Any questions or comments to any of those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. That moves us on then to reports of the Committee of the Whole. And the first one is General Government Report regarding Municipal Service Delivery Review. And I have a resolution that Council received the current state assessment summary for the Municipal Service Delivery Review. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Matheson, seconded by Carr. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. That moves us then on to the second report of the Committee of the Whole, which is a Community Services, Parks and Recreation report regarding Lamont Sports Park Phase 2 and exemption to municipal alcohol policy. And I have a resolution that Council approve the Phase 2 considerations for Lamont Sports Park to be included in the terms of reference for the Lamont Sports Park Fundraising Strategy Committee, and grant a one-time exemption to the municipal alcohol policy to permit alcohol to be consumed in the community complex, tiered seating and front lobby for the 2022 Curl On Tanker Championship, February 6 to 13, 2022. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Carr, seconded by Schreider. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. That moves us to reports of municipal officers and committees. And I have a staff report to declare the office of Southampton Ward Councillor vacant. And I have a resolution that whereas Councillor John Rich resigned his office of Southampton Ward Councillor effective September 7, 2021, and whereas in accordance with Section 2621 of the Municipal Act, when an officer of a member of council when an office of a member of council becomes vacant, council shall at its next meeting declare the office vacant. Now therefore be it resolved that the office of Southampton Ward Councillor is hereby declared vacant. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Grace, seconded by Smith. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Then we have a staff reports from the Social Athletics of Saugeen Shores about concert in the courts, and I have a resolution that council grants permission to the Social Athletics of Saugeen Shores to host a beach volleyball tournament and licensed concert event at the Port Elgin Main Beach on Friday, September 17 from 4 p.m. until 11 p.m., Saturday, September 18 from 8 a.m. until 11 p.m., and further authorize an exemption to the noise bylaw to allow amplified music between 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. on Friday, September 17 and Saturday, September 18. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Schreider, second by Matheson. Questions or comments? We'll start with the deputy mayor and then Karen Schreider.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this is probably for Phil. Phil, this same type of event was held last weekend in Sauble Beach. Were there any concerns raised over that weekend?
We watched it closely, Mr. Mayor. It was called the Endless Summer Party, and they had 5 bands, and no concerns regarding COVID best practices that we're aware of or came as a result of that event.
So you have no concerns, social distancing, COVID regulations about this event happening down at the beach?
The proponent has worked closely with the health unit to put a lot of COVID process and procedure in place to safeguard the concert goers.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilor Carr.
Thank you, and to you, Mr. Mayor. I guess just maybe a few comments, and I mean, I support the idea of the concert on the beach. I don't have an issue with the protocols, things like that. Where my issue comes that I'm asking the questions is, I'm just curious, first of all, when did we receive this application for this event?
It was fairly rushed, a quick timeline. We received it the week before last, late, and staff worked through our special events application process to get the report to council for approval. This event is an annual event, and typically the wrap-up tournament itself wouldn't come to council for approval because it's a year after year event, but staff felt that it's enough of a change from the annual event, adding the longer hours and the noise bylaw exemption and the concerts, that it was important to it come to council.
Yeah, sorry, and through you, Mr. Mayor, that's kind of what I was getting at, because I'm just wondering why it took so long maybe to get the application to us. I did see they were selling tickets online on August 30th is the soonest I had kind of seen where it was. So I have an issue with the fact that they're promoting and selling an event before it's been approved, especially when it's changed this dramatically. And from what I see, it's moved from where it would normally happen. And I understand it's on the proposed proponent's land for the CCV. This is where it's going to be moved onto the middle of the beach. And then I'm just curious too, I guess with that, I'm just looking for clarity on how it got fast tracked, because it kind of got bumped even past committee of whole. I don't know if it's something that would normally go there and right to council. And then also too, I think there was maybe some switch arounds with some insurance, like who's covering the insurance on that? Because although it's the proponent's land, from what I understand, I believe the town took back the insurance until maybe they occupied in case somebody was hit, in the parking lot, that type of thing. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, I'd like to have a few of those points clarified. And I hope this just isn't going to be the way some of these events roll, that it's something that's thrown at us, because it is this weekend. I mean, I feel like it kind of puts us in a bit of a bind that, you kind of are not necessarily forced our hand, but it, like I said, I want to support the event. I'll be the first one to attend a concert down there. I just want to make sure processes are followed. That's all that I guess I'm trying to make very clear here, that I don't think that it's acceptable that it was put through the way it did, in my opinion only. And I guess I just want to make sure that even if this does go through tonight, that it doesn't happen like this again, that there is processes that I'm assuming should be followed and wouldn't get pushed through this quick.
Okay. Councilor Schreider.
Thank you. And through you, I think that I definitely support it. I think that much like we heard from Pumpkin Fest tonight and a few other events that have taken place, is that groups like this are trying to rally and put on some sort of event. I think SAS has done a great job with trying to pull something together. I agree with Matt. I think it is a little bit rushed. And if that was just because they thought that maybe application didn't need to come through because it's a regular event. I think now they'll know. I hope anyway. I'm sure that they'll know now of some of the changes that have to take place. But I think it's great. Good on the group for doing this, and I hope it's a success for them. And as long as we, from an emergency fire and police, don't have any issues, and also working with the Grey Bruce Health Unit, I think if they're okay, that we should be okay.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Carr.
Sorry, I didn't get any clarification. I'm just curious about the insurance on that one there.
Sorry about that,
yeah, I'm just curious as to make sure, like, is this or the SAS group, are they covering the insurance for this? I'm assuming that, you know, there's a fairly big liability that goes along with that. We're talking about stuff on the beach again. We're close to the water. I mean, I know we've done it for years and hopefully no issues, but just want to make sure that this is something that's, you know, is it the town that's on the hook for this, or is it the group that's taking the liability on this?
Director?
Yeah, like all special events applications, the applicant is required to provide us $5 million worth of insurance, naming the town as additional insured. So the SAS group has their own insurance for this event, as they would every year.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, are there further comments? I don't see any. So you've heard the resolution. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? That's carried. All right, then that moves us on to the third report, which is a staff report to award a tender for playground equipment. And there is a resolution. Sorry, if I can turn my page here. It's a resolution that council approve Open Space Solutions Incorporated as the preferred contractor for the playground equipment replacement at Nodwell and Waterloo Parks at a cost of $190,572 plus HST, and further that New Worlds Park Solutions Incorporated be approved as the preferred contractor for Summerside and Pearson Parks at a cost of $196,882 plus HST. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Carr, second by Grace. Questions or comments? Councillor Schreider.
Thank you, and through you. The two companies presented to the Accessibility Committee, me and Councillor Grace both sit on it, and they did just a wonderful job. Jane and Frank and Lisa and all the staff that had contributed towards the RFP and that meeting, we want to thank them very much. These two vendors took the accessibility committee comments back, had a lot of dialogue back and forth. So I think it was just such a good opportunity for that committee to have input into that. So I want to thank staff for that for sure. One just clarification, Jane, for you, and maybe it's just wording. I think that the proposal that we saw at ACC, the company's name was Play World, and this report says New World. Maybe it's the same company. I'm just clarifying.
Yeah, it is. This is their corporate name.
Perfect.
That's the reason I put it in the report.
Thank you.
Okay, further comments? I think it's just important before we pass this to say a word of thanks to the Lions Club of Port Elgin for offering $50,000 toward these playground installations. I think that's very generous of them, and sort of obviously indicative of the kind of contributions that Lions make frequently in our community, and just a huge thank you to them, one of our great service clubs. So if there's nothing further, then you've heard the recommendation and the resolution. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, that moves us then on to item 4, which is a striking committee report. And there's a resolution that the terms of reference for the Lamont Sports Park Fundraising Committee report be approved. 2, that the following vacancies created due to the resignation of Councillor Rich remain vacant until council returns to full complement. Bruce Area Solid Waste Recycling Committee of Adjustment and Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee. Further, the vacancy on the Southampton BIA be filled on a temporary basis with the appointment of Deputy Mayor Matheson. And 3, that the following members be appointed to the Bicycle Friendly Community Ad Hoc Committee: Deputy Mayor Matheson Chair, Melissa Dular, Kim Davidson, Mary Lou Hills, Alyssa Schufelt, Greg Tatey, a member to be appointed by the Saugeen Rail Trail Association, and the second council member position to remain vacant until council is at full complement. Is there a mover and seconder for the resolution? By the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Grace. Any questions or comments? Councilor Schreider.
Thank you. And through you, just a few questions with regards to the terms of reference for the Lamont Sports Park Fundraising Committee. I assume I just direct them to the striking committee then, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, that's fine. Us or the
Okay.
clerk can answer them.
Yeah, perfect. So just a clarification. So all the amenities in phase 1 and phase 2 can be incorporated. And so, for example, the naming of the 6 diamonds. So if that fundraising strategy is looking to do sponsorship for all 6 diamonds, that's permitted, correct?
Yeah, that was the intention of the committee. Linda, the appropriate amendments were made to accommodate that. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Section 3.1C, the request for funds of council. I do believe that the $10,000 request was removed. And the way that this is worded is that any funds would go to council for approval. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it was the opinion of the striking committee that it wouldn't be appropriate to approve funding through a committee terms of reference, that would have to be handled separately, either by resolution of council or through the budget process. So any number, we can be approached by the committee in a number of ways. The committee could put together a specific funding request and come to council, and a specific resolution could be considered by council to fund, or a budget request could be made as part of the 2022 budget that council could consider as part of its budget deliberations. But the two things have been decoupled because it's sort of a backdoor way to approve funding through a committee terms of reference.
Okay. I guess my thought behind that would be that could potentially be a 4-week turnaround. And if the fundraising committee needed action or access to funds, I'll say to perhaps hire a professional fundraiser to come in and do an orientation session for us for 8 hours for one day, call it a couple of $1,000. We would have to wait 4 weeks for permission to do that. Is that accurate?
There would need to be approval from council. Now, it doesn't necessarily take 4 weeks because a recommendation from committee goes directly to council, and not to the committee of the whole. So it could be done in a single meeting of council.
Okay. No, and that's perfect. Thank you for that clarification. I think that, and just to follow that up, it's not to avoid any responsibility or anything like that, or lack of responsibility. It's, I think, just to be effective as possible within this committee, and that if timing is of the essence, then we will try our best to get to council with any requests then as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do. There's no intention by the striking committee to hamstring the committee in any way. It's just simply a process question. Council has to spend money in a certain way, but I think there's no reason we can't be expeditious about it.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions or comments with regard to the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. All right. So then that moves us on to, sorry, I just moved away from my agenda, moves us on to, we have no motions or notices of motion. So we have bylaws, and 3 bylaws on this evening. Before I call them out, does anybody wish to have any of them considered individually? Doesn't look like it, so I'll read the resolution. It's resolved that the following bylaws are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 13th day of September 2021. 162/2021 being a bylaw to amend the Cenotaph Bylaw 108/2006 to establish certain rules and regulations regarding the maintenance, operation, and management of the Cenotaph Park. 263/2021 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into of an agreement with Dr. Kim Whitaker. 364/2021 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into of an agreement with Okansa Lavasova, and 465/2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meetings of the corporation of the town of Saugeen Shores. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Mattson, seconded by Myatt.
Mr. Mayor, can we, I had my hand up late to pull one, but that's okay. Can we make comments on any of these or not? Can I make a general comment? It was just about the physician recruitment, and I was just a shout out to Phil. Phil, you've done a really remarkable job here with physician recruitment, and I happen to know, Dr. Alexandra Levasalva, from Dr. Billings' office, who gives me my allergy shots, and she's just an amazing person. And to bring her back 2 years from now, Phil, was pretty incredible. That she's going off to school and then back in 2 years to set up full-time practice is really remarkable. And you are to be commended. And I just think we're gonna attack that orphan patient list once and for all. Hopefully, we're getting there, aren't we? We're getting close. And every doctor we add, it knocks another 500, 600, 700 off that orphan patient list. And hopefully, Phil, I hope you agree, in the next 6 months, 9 months, hopefully we get that orphan patient list down to 0. Wouldn't that be great for our community? So, Phil, just a quick question, if I might, Mr. Mayor. For those people in our community that still don't have a family doctor, could you just remind people about the phone call they have to make to Healthcare Connect? Just go over that one more time for people.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Deputy Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, our orphan patient list, we're slowly chipping away at it with the 6 doctors that council's invested in to bring them to our community. We hopefully early next year, we'll see nobody on our orphan patient list. We'll connect everyone in the community that wants a doctor will have a doctor, and that's great work that we've done together as a community to bring them here. And should council support the bylaws before you tonight, Oksana's start gives us growth for the future. So in 2022, we'll see doctor capacity for the growth that we're seeing year to year out to 2026, late 2026, early 2027.
Yeah, great job, Phil, and Mr. Mayor, thanks for allowing me to speak there.
Yeah. No, I think it's important that you did, important that the director got a chance to speak. We have essentially defeated the orphan patient list with these resolutions this evening. That's not to say that our work doesn't have to continue. It does on physician recruitment, because we're going to need more physicians as our community continues to grow. But I think, we suffered a setback with physician recruitment earlier this year with the loss of the agreement with Bruce Power and Kincardine, but that hasn't slowed us down. We haven't missed a step, and we've continued to recruit doctors, and that's thanks to Phil and our physician recruitment committee and the tremendous work they've been doing. So this is really good news for our community and news that needs to be celebrated. So thank you for that, Phil. Are there other questions or comments with regard to the resolution?
Mr. Mayor, I make one last comment. I think it's important to get the message out there as often as we can, and it's doctors are now taking patients in our community. The doctors that are here and established are taking patients. So it's really important to register on the Healthcare Connect list. It's the only way to connect to the doctors that are looking for patients right now. And we really ask people don't call the clinics. Our medical buildings become overwhelmed with phone calls after a night like tonight, and they can't help there. Please call or register with Healthcare Connect.
Yeah, absolutely. I expect we'll have a press release going out about this, and at some point we'll certainly include that message there as well, because that's very important. I did have one comment. I missed it actually. Sorry, when I was calling out the resolution, but on the Cenotaph Park bylaw, we have a report here this evening. We requested stepped up enforcement from when we met the last time to today, and I know police and bylaw enforcement have engaged in stepped up enforcement in that area, monitoring, evaluation, et cetera, and to ensure that no one is desecrating the Port Elgin Cenotaph. And we have the report here this evening saying numerous inspections of the park were completed over the past 3 weeks and no infractions were found. I guess I just asked council if we don't, if we continue to do stepped up enforcement, which we should do, and we have access to video surveillance, if we can, I just wonder, this is to ban dogs from the park is, sort of the nuclear option. It's a very aggressive maneuver. It may be necessary at some point, but we do not have, I just wonder if we have the grounds today to take that step, or if we should continue to request that our police and bylaw enforcement officers do strong enforcement in that area. And if we find infractions, if we find people leaving excrement in the park or desecrating the monuments in any way, that we use our video surveillance equipment and find those people and prosecute them. And only after we find that that doesn't work or is not working, should we take the step of instituting additional bans on activity in the park or in any park. So I wonder, I just wonder if it's necessary, if we're taking a step too far here in instituting this ban based on what I'm seeing right now, and if we should be taking some interim steps before we implement this ban. I guess I would request of council that we at minimum draw this out for individual consideration. I apologize, I should have made that request earlier, but got caught up on my own thought wave, and I don't usually make those requests myself. But is that okay with the mover and seconder, Mats and Mayed, if we consider this individually? Yes. All right. So I would, so I do have, so the resolution, we would consider the first resolution first, the consider bylaw 62 2021 on its own. I guess my request of council on that item would be to defer passage of this bylaw for a period of several months, potentially, while we engage in stepped up enforcement. Anybody want to make that resolution for me, or do I need to step down from the chair to make it? Councillor Grace makes the, you're moving it, Councillor Grace. Councillor Mayed is seconding. Okay. Is there any discussion on the deferral? We could make it as a, I don't know, is it okay with Grace and Mayed if we defer for a period of, say, 6 months? Okay, so the resolution is to defer for a period of 6 months. We can have discussion on that. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having seen it many times, I don't want to get to Remembrance Day in another month, 2 months, and have it happen that when we're going out there, there's 15 different piles that the Legion members are rushing to clean up. Sure, our police force is doing a great job watching right now, but they can't be there all the time because they've got a lot of other things to do. Weather has been good, so people are able to get out, but as soon as things start to get nasty, they go to the shortest and greenest spot possible. So I prefer that we make the cenotaph as important and as segregated from destruction as it can be, damage, and keep the motion on.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I support our deputy mayor. I do sit on the Cenotaph committee, and I guess, well, actually, Mr. Mayor, I had to declare a conflict on this one, didn't I, at the last meeting? So I guess I will have to declare conflict on this one again tonight, unfortunately.
Okay, and so the reason for your conflict is because you're a member of the committee, is that correct? Okay, all right. Are there further comments, Councillor Schreider?
Sorry, and through you, I agree with Deputy Mayor as well. I voted in favor of the motion to introduce the bylaw. I'm going to continue to support that, I think, for tonight anyway. So thank you.
Okay, further comments, Councillor Matt?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the deferral. I'm not sure if 6 months is the right number at this point. We're we got October, November, December, January, February. March isn't, maybe 8 months to put it into the spring to see how we fare through. It's kind of hard to assess how much excrement might be left there while there's still snow on the ground. Maybe make an 8 month deferral, but I agree that we have video surveillance equipment there. And I'm as big a supporter of the sanctity of that space. In fact, I was the one that put together the posse that laid the sod on that so many years ago. That was one of the first volunteer activities I took upon myself when I came to town. We put together a group of people and we laid the sod there with the help of, under the watchful eye of former Saugeen Ward Reeve, Harry Tatey. And so I consider that place a sacred ground as well. But if we could make it out until the spring, I would support deferring it and use the law enforcement people and the video surveillance equipment that's already installed to find out if we have one or two bad apples or if it was everybody. Thanks.
Okay, further comments? Yeah, I think that, you know, a deferral for a period of 6 months with stepped up enforcement will give us an opportunity to find whoever's doing this, and catch them. I think, you know, would be, you know, there's a law right now on the books that specifically makes it illegal to deposit garbage in Cenotaph Park, but people do it. There's a curfew on Cenotaph Park. I don't know how many people know that, but between 11 p.m. and I think 8 a.m. or something, you're not even allowed to go into Cenotaph Park. I don't know though if how well people are aware of that. See, we can pass whatever laws we want, but that won't necessarily mean, if we pass a ban on dogs in the park tonight, that won't necessarily mean that there won't be excrement in the park. It will only mean we have another bylaw. I'd say we have a bylaw, we have an existing bylaw that specifically prohibits this behavior. And of course, we have a community consensus that desecrating those monuments is reprehensible. So I think with those two things, and I think a clear direction from this council that our bylaw enforcement and police should be there, monitor it, and use video surveillance to catch people doing this, we're going to have a good shot at stemming this activity. So I'd like us to give that a try before imposing more rigorous bans or more strong prohibitions on the public. That should always be our last option. Enforcement should be our first option. So we do have a motion on the table to defer, and I'll ask all in favor of the deferral. Opposed? That's deferred. So we'll move on to the second, and we'll bring the Vice Deputy Mayor back. There he is. All right, so we have the, so now we will take bylaws 63, 64, and 65. And is there any questions or further questions or comments? If I don't see any, then we'll ask all in favor. And those are carried. All right, now, I'm sorry, I need to get, the Deputy Mayor moved the resolution, the Vice Deputy Mayor seconded it. I need a different seconder on the resolution. Can I have a different seconder, Councillor Carr? All right. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the end of regular council, and I have a resolution that this regular council meeting of September 13, 2021 hereby adjourns at 9:41 p.m. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Smith, seconded by Grace. All in favor? We stand adjourned.